Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Happy graduates came on the stage. They were given certificates. Girls were given flowers and boys were given small gifts. Dear graduates, Clara, smiling ingratiatingly, took under her arm a handsome 40-year-old man in a dark, expensive suit who entered the hall. Tonight would not be possible without our dear sponsor, Christian Wilson. Let's welcome him. Flowers and gifts for our graduates, provided by his firm. She was the first to applaud, led him to a place of honor among the guests, and sat down next to him. Pay attention to that girl over there. Nodded the director of the orphanage to the stage. Pretty, relaxed, the pride of our orphanage. A pleasant conversationalist can do a lot. Take a closer look. Not bad, quietly replied Wilson, appraising, looking at the graduate. But it's not the same. I'm tired of pretty faces in their 18, already gone through fire and water. I want a clean girl, not spoiled. She should be rustic, knave, but smart. I asked for a modest, simple girl, preferably pretty. Isabella Davis is invited to the stage. The hostess has announced. Who's that? Squinting, the man asked, scrutinizing the girl, who, smiling embarrassedly, approached the host. How come I've never seen her before? Well, Clara hesitated. She's so unassuming you wouldn't even look at her if it weren't for graduation. She's pretty sure, but she's very modest. She's a headache. Believe me, she can't do anything. She's hardly interesting to you as a woman. Clara got nervous. Trouble is, I thought she wouldn't notice Isabella. I had dressed her in a low-colored outfit, but the devil had noticed. The headmistress was upset because of the pupil. She loved her maternally and did not want the fate that was prepared by the dear guest. I'll decide who I'm interested in and who I'm not. Wilson cut her off abruptly. Just such a type, the limit of my dreams. Did you hide her on purpose? He looked suspiciously at the director. Don't disappoint me. You know I don't tolerate games behind my back. I thought that little gray mouse couldn't be the centerpiece of your house. How can she be dignified at social gatherings? She'll embarrass you. Believe me, she'll bring you grief. Meanwhile, the festivities are over. Christian, Clara have secluded themselves in the principal's office. I'm taking Isabella away from you. In an expensive leather armchair, the man said. I liked her right away. Listen. Clara frantically searched for a reason to refuse. She's just a girl, knave, unintelligent, but what if I sent Lisa with you? She's a quick-witted, skillful girl. I think she's closer to you than Isabella. I'm afraid she'll disappoint you. Clara was not in vain nervous. Her guest was a lover of young girls who had just finished school. The woman realized that, despite the unruly, cocky character, Isabella will not be able to fight back. Don't be so shaky. Christian grinned. Your son is safe as long as you honor our arrangements. Yes, I'll do as you say. I'm glad we understand each other. The man smiled sweetly and threw some bills on the table. This is for you to ease your conscience. I didn't realize you were so sentimental. If you care so much about this Isabella, it means I didn't make the wrong choice. He left, and Clara sat down at the table, dropped her head on her hands, and fell silent. What a scoundrel! What a lecher! She muttered to herself. I am good. I could not defend the girl. My heart is not in place. I am so worried about Isabella. But what can I do? Two dear people are at stake, and yet my son's freedom is more precious. The way things are, I can't let my child go to prison. And Isabella, God forgive me, I'm a sinner. In the morning, Clara went to the dining room where the inmates were having breakfast. Isabella, come here, please. "Yes, Clara." Trustingly, looking into the eyes of the director, the girl replied. The woman looked away, uncomfortable with the upcoming conversation, but Wilson cornered her. "And what are those people in strict suits doing here? Who are they waiting for?" Isabella asked, entering the principal's office. "Isabella." The woman paused. There was a struggle going on inside her, but she knew that the mother would win and the principal would fulfill the wish of the man who sponsored all the big events at the orphanage. "I'm very happy that you graduated from high school. You are the pride of this year's graduating class. I know you have big plans for your future, but you will have to put them on hold." "Why?" The girl looked at the principal, puzzled. "Wilson is waiting for you at his house." "Wilson? Our guest from yesterday?" Clara nodded. She was visibly nervous. "Why does he need me? I don't understand." "What don't you understand?" The headmaster suddenly shouted in a trembling voice. "Didn't you hear anything about him from our girls' graduates? He liked you." "I've heard something in passing." Isabella slowly began to realize what had been said. "But I don't like him. I don't want to go out with him. One of the girls wanted to go to his house. I don't remember. Let them go in my place. I don't want to be his concubine." "You can't refuse," tiredly said Clara. "He won't give up. If anything, he's made up his mind. I'm not going to go to him. You have no right to force me." The girl rushed to the door, swung it open. The exit was blocked by stout young men. They stared silently at Isabella, ready to twist her at any moment if necessary. She slammed the door shut and turned to the principal. "How can you do this to us? I mean, he's old. Have you sold out for money? You don't understand anything." Clara, nervously biting her lips, wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep warm. "He's a scary man and I'm on the hook for him. A few years ago, he saved my son, got him out of jail, my boy's freedom. That's the trump card Wilson is using, and I'm powerless. I can't fight back. He's blackmailing me. One day you'll be a mother, and you'll realize you'd sell yourself to the bald man for your child to be happy. So there's no chance of me getting out of here. Those are his guards at the door. I wanted to spare you from that fate, but he wanted someone just like you. He said he wanted a naive, modest girl, and God gave you beauty and intelligence to ruin. How many girls did he have in his collection? You're the fourth. And where did they go? Do you know what happened to them after they were in the hands of this Wilson?" I don't know anything about their fate." Clara looked pityingly at Isabella. "I haven't tried to find out. So you send 18-year-old girls to a grown man and just forget about their fate. How's that? Doesn't it make you feel bad?" I'm sorry. Tears came to the woman's eyes. They agreed at once. No one resisted. She grasped Isabella's hand and spoke eagerly. If I could stop him, but my son's freedom is in his hands. You will understand me when you are a mother yourself. You'd better accept it. He won't back down. He's a scary man. He'll stop at nothing. Even if I tried to report him to the police, he'd get away with it. It's all been bought." Isabella stood for a moment, looking into the headmaster's eyes. In them, except fear and entreaty, she read nothing else, then pulled her hand out of the hands of Claire, abruptly opened the door and said loudly, "Well, if there's no escaping fate, let's take it as it comes. Let's go, boys." Isabella was returning from school, not far from the house, noticed her grandmother, caught up with her mother, who leaned with her back against the fence, sat looking at the surrounding with meaningless eyes. The girl slowed her step and stopped. Well, stood up like a stumbling block. Vanessa shouted, "Help your mother to the bed. I can't do it alone. You see, She's drunk again. Lord, when will it all end? Make sense of my foolish daughter. When will you get drunk on this vodka? Isabella obediently came and took her mother under her arm, but she couldn't hold her and dropped her on the ground. Oh, you bastard! Grandmother hit her, dry fist in the shoulder. Quite sensitively, the girl wrinkled from the pain. You can't hold your mother, hold her tight. The two of them dragged the mother to the bed. You didn't watch her again. The old woman scolded her granddaughter. I told you not to let her out of the house. I was at school. How could I watch her? Justified the girl. We left the house together in the morning. She said she went to work. What kind of job? She was fired last week. What am I going to do with them? The old woman cried. Both of them and their husbands drink like crazy, and you can't help them. Did you go for bread? No, I didn't have time. I'll be right back. Isabella ran out of the house, afraid she'd get another beating from her grandmother. Isabella, a neighbor met her. There's your father lying by the store. You should pick him up. The girl hurried to the store. Her father was lying on the side, sleeping soundly. Daddy. Isabella shook him by the shoulder. You won't wake him up. Some man said confidently. And how can I bring him home? The girl was confused. Don't be sad, we'll help you. The man bent down, pulled her father by the arm and put him on the ground, then picked him up, threw him on his shoulder and dragged him. Isabella ran after him. Receive. Entering the house and breathing heavily, the stranger spoke. He carefully lowered his heavy burden onto the couch, straightened up, took a breath, and left. Where did you find him? Vanessa asked, making her father comfortable on the couch. Outside the store, he was asleep. The man volunteered to help. I didn't even ask. The world is not without kind people. Did you buy bread? The old woman caught on. No, I had to come back because of my father. You wretch! The grandmother swung and pulled on her granddaughter's back with the towel she held in her hands. Isabella quickly rushed into the store. What are you going to kill Isabella for? A neighbor showed up on the doorstep. You're out of control. Granny grumbled. No wonder. Parents who do not dry out for a day. The child is not needed at all. Somehow she's still studying well. Another girl in her place would have abandoned everything long ago. Yes, it's a pity about the girl. The neighbor lamented. You should caress her. The girl lacks love and affection. One day she won't be able to stand it and will do something. That's why we have to keep a tight grip on her, so that she grows up strictly, or else she'll go down a crooked path like her parents. Wash the floors. She told her granddaughter when she returned from the store. You've trampled here. I have no strength left. Okay, Grandma. The girl obediently took a bucket and a rag. You're driving the girl crazy. The neighbor reproached the grandmother. She doesn't hear a kind word from you. Is it her fault that both parents have gone crazy? None of your business. The old woman replied glumly. I can't cope alone, and parents are of little use. You should take pity on her. The friend lamented. But what is the use of that pity? Then she will thank me for teaching her everything. The mother should be an example, but not fate. Both of them should be deprived of parental rights. I don't think so. It's better to live at home with them than in an orphanage. The neighbor shook her head disapprovingly and went away. Grandma, can Cindy come to my birthday party? Isabella asked one day. She was going to be 13 in 2 days. Think about it. Where are you going to invite guests? Grandma frowned. Parents won't let them stay. They just want an excuse to get drunk. Then you'll be embarrassed. We'll lock ourselves in my room. No one will hear us. Please, Grandma. All right, Vanessa muttered. Just don't tell your parents. Maybe you'll get away with it. I'll make you something tasty." The grandmother hoped in vain that the mother would not remember about her daughter. She came in the evening with a bottle of wine, set the table. She ordered her mother, shaking her hand, pouring vodka into a glass. "Would you not spoil the party, Isabella?" asked the older woman. "She has a guest. I have the right to drink to my daughter's health, and you are not my order. I gave birth to her. That's a good reason to have another drink. I drink with my own money. I'm not borrowing it from you. Can I have an appetizer? You'd better replace the electric stove. The wire's getting hot. It's not a bad thing. You're always dissatisfied with something." Angrily said the woman. "You need, you buy, but I have no money. When I get a job, then everything will be, but until then, do not bother me. You and your husband will always have money for vodka." Vanessa grumbled, serving a simple appetizer. Isabella and her friend sat in the room for a while, watched cartoons, played, and went home. The girl was glad that her mother did not make a scandal like last year when Isabella invited her friends, and in no way expected that her mother would come home drunk from work and roughly disperse the whole company. The girl at that moment was ready to fall to the ground with shame. In the morning, she kissed her grandmother and ran off to school. "Do not delay. I'm boiling borscht with your favorite garlic buns." The old woman shouted after her. "Okay, Grandma." The day was going great. Isabella was in a hurry to get home. She was walking, facing the spring sunshine, and humming a cheerful song to herself. Wow! Approaching the house, suddenly noticed Isabella. An uneasiness stirred in her soul. Was there a fire? There were people in the street, cars, ambulances, firemen. "Do you know who has a fire?" She asked a woman who was trying to see what was going on up ahead. "Isabella." The neighbor looked at her fearfully. "Your house is on fire." "How?" The girl was dumbfounded and rushed through the crowd. "Where?" Someone called her and tried to hold her back. Don't go to the ashes, stop. Let me go, my mom's there." They grabbed her, held her down. She started to break free. "Grandma, Daddy, let me go. Why are you standing there?" "We have to save her." She screamed, trying to break free from the tight embrace. "I have to go to them." "Isabella, they're dead." A man's strong arms shook her. "You can't go in there, do you hear me?" "They're gone." "Yes, they are. Why are you standing there? Why aren't you helping?" "They can't be dead." "Don't you understand? They're out there. I'll find them." "Let me go, please." The girl suddenly weakened, slipped out of my arms, sat down on the grass and wept. She raised her head to the sky. "Mommy." The soul-crushing scream rose above the flames and vanished into the sky. Everyone standing around her was heartbroken by the cry. Women wiped their tears with handkerchiefs, men gritted their teeth, and looked sympathetically at the little girl's grief. People were quietly talking among themselves, watching the fire being doused. Suddenly it flared up, and I looked, and it was going up in flames. No one escaped. The firemen came quickly, but there was nothing they could do. They flooded to keep the flames from spreading to other buildings. Do we know what caused it? The cops said it was faulty wiring. Vanessa complained that the electric stove was sparking, but who'd listen to her? All dead. Good thing the girl was at school, or she would have been too. Why did the ambulance come? They thought they could save someone, but there. What a grief! I feel sorry for Isabella. Now she'll go to an orphanage. The girl sat in the grass and stared blankly at the house, tears running down her cheeks. She could not understand that she was left alone, without a home, without relatives. "Come on, sweetheart." Someone lifted her up. There's no reason for you to sit here. Come and stay with us until the child welfare authorities get here. You must be hungry. Grandma promised me borscht. Swallowing tears, quietly said the girl. Poor you? Poor orphan. How unlucky you are. The neighbor shook her head. Isabella followed her obediently. Her strength to cry was gone, and there was a persistent smell of burning in her nose. She collapsed on the offered sofa, curled up in a ball under the blanket, and cried quietly. No, I don't believe it. It can't be. Mom, Dad, and the always nagging Grandma. There is no one. How can I go on living? You cry, sweetheart. An old woman stroked her head. You'll feel better. God willing, everything in life will get better. She sighed heavily. The girls were fidgeting in front of the mirror, trying on dresses for the graduation ceremony. The exams were finally behind them. Isabella looked dreamily at her reflection. I thought they would never end. Now we are free. You see, no tutors, no scheduled breakfasts, no getting up, no going to bed, but life will begin. Isabella, you're so beautiful. The girlfriend did not take her admiring eyes off the girl. You'd say so too. Isabella looked at herself in the mirror. I can't believe we've known each other for only 5 years. Yes, she laughed. It seems like a lifetime. She ran over to Kelly and hugged her tightly. You know, as strange as it sounds, I'm glad you ended up in our orphanage. I was always jealous. You're lucky to remember your parents. Yeah, lucky. I just remember them, always drunk. I never even knew mine. Do you remember when we were friends? Of course I remember. And Isabella got sad. The ritual, the new girl's registration. Everyone was laughing, and I was on the floor with a broken nose. You were the only one who stood up for me. From that day on, no one ever tried to mess with you again. Of course, because you fought like a tiger. Isabella laughed. I'm sorry we have to break up. I'll miss you. But we'll correspond. We'll return phone calls. I'll definitely come visit as soon as I get settled, and you come too. You finally decided to go to modeling school. Haven't you changed your mind? Well, can you imagine what awaits you there? Yes, the girl dreamily spun around the room. It's not for nothing that I earned my portfolio. Tried to participate in all the events. I hope they'll help me get through the competition. Yeah, with your looks, you could be an actress, not just a model. Juliet would be amazing in your performance. In our amateur talent show, you're unrivaled. Don't exaggerate. Isabella was embarrassed by the flattery. We have a lot of talented kids here. Thanks to her, my literacy is invisible. She made me participate in all Olympiads and events. Lucky you, Isabella. You know what you want to get out of life? Well, Isabella hugged her friend. Why are you so sad? We'll be fine, and you'll find yourself. Shall we go to the auditorium? They're giving out diplomas now. They say Wilson has prepared such presents for us. I can't wait to see them. The girls went to the auditorium that were already in full swing handing out certificates. Look, whispered in my friend's ear. Wilson here at the age, and yet nothing like that. Attractive and in good shape, his peers have long since grown their bellies, and this one is watching himself, and still that walker, not a single beautiful woman will not miss. The girl laughed, and still not married. I'd like to see the one he will marry. Who is she, anyway? Isabella asked, looking at the tall, broad-shouldered man with the piercing look in his blue eyes. You're crazy. The girl was surprised. This is the local patron of the arts. Everything we have in the orphanage is his merit. He gave us a computer class last year. Look at him. He's very handsome. Many of our girls have a crush on him. Uh-huh. agreed Isabella. But it's old. What do they see in it? You don't know anything about men. At this age they are at their best. And what does it matter how old he is? Hotly whispered in her ear friend, if he has money, chickens do not peck. Anybody with him, like behind a stone back, a dream, not a man. How do you know? Isabella looked at her friend suspiciously. We're waiting for Isabella Davis. The girlfriend suddenly heard. Go. Isabella pushed Isabella, the girl. It's your turn. Imagine you're on the runway. Show everyone what the first beauty of our orphanage should look like. Let them gasp at your attractiveness. The girl walked to the stage. Returning to her seat, she felt the stares on her. Wilson was looking at Isabella in a way that made her uncomfortable. Why is he looking at me so strangely? She thought, and shivered under the predatory gaze of his blue eyes. It's like he's undressing me. I wouldn't want to be alone with him. Huh? She restrained herself. I thought, why would he want me? But Isabella was not mistaken. Christian was staring at her with a greedy gaze. I must have her. The man thought, gazing at the girl. Very nice. He smiled, satisfied, anticipating a night in the arms of the young beauty. Isabella felt uncomfortable, in the company of 3 scowling, taciturn men. Where are we going? The girl could not bear the long silence, trying not to show how frightened she was. Christian's country house. The man was silent. If you behave well, the owner will not offend. He likes obedient young ladies. The men laughed. It depends on what he expects from me. The girl thought to herself. One thing is clear, there's no point in begging him to let me go, and I'm not going to snot. Rose-colored glasses also long ago removed. I understand, not tea drinking invited. The only thing left is to accept the situation as it is, and then think how to get out of it. It's okay, I'll be able to stand up for myself. If you cannot escape from fate, you must take a chance, try to get out of poverty, so that no Wilson in the future no longer dare to drool at the sight of me and offer all sorts of abominations. I'm strong, I can handle this old man who likes young girls. I'll make him dance to my tune. I won't give up so easily. He doesn't expect to get me on a silver platter. Life in an orphanage had taught me a thing or two. And yet Isabella was scared, her heart clenched uneasily from the unknown. Here we are. The driver announced, stopping the car in the yard of a huge country house. Come. The guard opened the door in front of her. Christian is waiting. If you'll be good, you'll even like to be his guest. The man laughed, casting an expressive glance at her gorgeous body. Isabella entered the Wilson house and looked around in a hostess-like manner. Quite an environment, she thought. Plenty of room to spread out. Her courage was ostentatious. She tried not to think about what awaited her in the house. Isabella! Christian, opening his arms, went to meet his guest. I'm glad you agreed to accept my invitation. I'm honored. You may not believe me, but when I saw you on stage, I realized that this is the woman I have dreamed of all my life. You captured my heart from the very first minute. I promise you won't regret coming here. As I approached her, I grabbed her in his arms and began to cover her with passionate kisses. Christian. Isabella let him kiss her, and then slipped out of his embrace. Is that any way to welcome a guest? Especially a woman. She smiled slyly, though her insides trembled with fear and loathing. The man stared at her, puzzled by the question. What do you mean? Where are the flowers, the champagne? I was imagining a romantic candle at dinner, and you immediately kiss. I didn't expect to take a complete stranger without foreplay. I'm told you're a skillful lover. We should get to know each other a little first, and save the best for later. I agree. The bouquet and confection period in our case is a little irrelevant, but still I wanted to prepare for the main event of the night. Yes, he mumbled something under his breath. I wasn't thinking. It's a very important day. I'm entering adulthood. You're my first man, and I'd like it to be beautiful. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing? Eh? She playfully poked him in his slightly bulging belly with her finger. Did you want to save money on me? Or did you want to get me in bed right away? Is that really all you can offer me on a first date? She was on the edge of her seat, fear of the unknown forcing her to act brazenly. Isabella grabbed his tie, pulled him toward her. She didn't think that such an experienced lover would decide to dispense with the love game. The girl wrapped the tie around her fist. Christian blushed. It became hard for him to breathe. You witch, barely catching his breath? The man wheezed. This has never happened to me before. I like you, and I want you now. He suddenly grasped her slender wrists and yanked her sharply toward him. He forcefully put her on his lap and tried to kiss her, one hand holding her down, the other hand running under her blouse and squeezing her breasts. How hot you are, a delicate, innocent flower. Let's go to the bedroom. I am overwhelmed with desire to possess you. Ah, you old lecher. Isabella shrieked and slapped him hard. What are you doing, bitch? Christian howled and grabbed his cheek. Taking advantage of the confusion, the girl jumped to her feet and ran a safe distance away from the excited man. She stopped by the hotly burning fireplace and grabbed a poker. Don't come near me. I'll defend myself. Don't expect to get away with this. Wilson hissed, rubbing his cheek, hot with fire. You seem to have forgotten where you are and why you're here. Don't make me angry. I can take you by force right now. Don't play with me or you'll regret it. I don't want to. She shouted, looking at him with a burning, feverish gleam in her eyes. How do you want it, my dear? He smirked. Rose petals in bed? Light music? Soft whispers and poetry reading until morning? I'm past that age. I prefer to spend my time making love. That goes without saying, but not now. The girl sat in the chair across from Christian. I propose a wager. A wager? Christian's eyes widened. Do you realize who you're offering this to? Isabella remembered a conversation with a friend who said that Wilson was a gambler. Yes, the girl declared defiantly. You're a gambler, but if you sleep with me, what's the interest? In a week at the most, you'll be satiated and kicked out of the house. Thank you if you'll pay for the first night in bed with a virgin. Naturally, I'll thank you. Insert man. No woman would accuse me of being stingy. Money, jewelry, I am a generous lover. That's understandable, but I suggest you entertain yourself in another way. Admit it. Do all your days resemble one another? Perhaps. Christian is wary. You boast that women never complain about you. I've heard that many try to get your attention and swear eternal love just for the money. You buy women, change them like gloves, and not one has ever said she loved you out of her heart and not for wealth. Yes, everyone's happy to be in your bed. I don't see where you're going with this, do you? Wilson frowned. He was beginning to be annoyed by this willful girl. But I'm not one of them, and you're not my type. That's not the kind of man I've seen around me. Isabella paused meaningfully. But if you manage to make me love you, I will become yours without any additional conditions. Do what you want with me then, and when I get bored, you can throw me out on the street. And the second condition? But if you yourself fell in love with me to unconsciousness, then I will still become yours, but only through the registration of marriage. You will make me your lawful wife, with all the consequences." Wilson laughed out loud. "Do you know that I never lose?" "We'll see about that." The girl grinned. "Don't hope that the problem is so easy to solve. But I still don't understand. What is the bet?" "You'll be mine either way." He accepted her game. She hooked him, and the excitement of the gambler flared up in him. He liked the girl more and more. That's true, but everything must be consensual, without coercion. Those are the only terms we'll agree to with you. Do you agree? To hell with you. Wilson waved his hand. But now I want to make love to you. I've already put this moment off for too long. I didn't bring you here for a heart-to-heart. He made an attempt to get closer to her. No, no. Isabella gestured for him to stop. Nothing can happen between us now. You yourself agreed to my proposal. For the rest of the bet, no bed. We agreed to make love consensually. Are you ready to sign off on your own loss? That doesn't sound like you. So now we're going to separate rooms and that's it? Of course. Isabella explained impatiently, like an unreasonable child. That's the point of our pact, to fall in love for real. And then either you get me or I get you. And at the end of the bet, we'll have a long married life. You won't lose anything at all. You'll only get me a little later. But you'll taste the victory when it's over. An unforgettable night in the arms of a virgin. What, Mr. Wilson? Is it weak? Squinting, the girl asked. Not a bit. The man replied defiantly. How long do you suggest? 3 months. How? Enough time and your experience of seduction, young fools, to win my heart? Or have you already lost your youthful vigor? That you can't do anything but skim off the cream by sleeping with an innocent girl. And I thought I was an alpha male, a heroic lover. But in reality, alas, a banal suitor, unable to give pleasure to a woman. You know how to hit a nerve. The man was sure of his victory. Wait, you'll still be at my feet, lying at my feet, begging for love and tenderness. He thought, you'll be begging me not to leave you. Well, the offer is tempting. Christian said slowly, my life has lacked spice. The reward for the tedious 3-month wait will be an unforgettable night with you. Without doubting my success, the more I really won't lose anything. Just 3 months and you're mine. So, do we have a deal? Isabella held out her hand to the man. Deal. He shook it with his strong hand. And you yourself will be able to endure 3 months? The girl was silent. You won't. Isabella grinned to herself. I'll never love you, and I'll never be your lover. I'm not likely to win over a man so adept at lovemaking. I just need to buy time, and then I'll decide what to do next. Little fool, you don't know I've never lost a game in my life. Wilson thought, looking at the girl with eyes darkened with passion. With what pleasure he would now undress her and show her what he could do. But he decided to see what would come of the bet. And you agreed to her terms? Laughed at him Buddy when Christian, over a shot of cognac, a few days later told him about the pair. Yes, I agreed to endure these months. It's worth it. You don't realize how seductive she is, and you hope she'll fall in love with you. I do. Arrogant, Wilson declared. You know I'm an expert in female psychology. In a month at the most, she will surrender to the mercy of the winner, and I will triumph, having gained power over this little girl who thinks herself a seductress of men's hearts. In fact, I'll be her first man. Christian? His friend looked at him suspiciously. Have you fallen in love with your prisoner? Even if I do, the man said evasively, the reward will not be long in coming. She's still mine. And you're ready to take her to register the marriage? That would be fun. Wilson laughed. But I haven't decided whether I'm ready to give up my freedom for another pretty face. although I must say she is clever. Isabella, however, has hit a nerve, Christian. Hoping to knock her down with the romance of a summer evening, he decided to organize a fancy dinner on his yacht. She wouldn't be able to resist. He told the captain, "No matter how hard she tries to play hard to get, she will not be able to remain indifferent to a ride on a luxury boat." "I'm sure." The captain smiled understandingly. "She will reciprocate. No frills," he ordered the chef. "A girl from the orphanage will feel uncomfortable. Champagne, appetizers, fruit, dessert. I got it, Christian. Anything else?" "Captain, have the deck decorated with balloons and musicians. I want some light music. We'll walk along the coast. The girl will love it." "I got it." Captain trumped. "Should we count on a night?" "No. For 3 to 4 hours, I think for the first time is enough. She will dance with joy." The man grinned. "What has she seen in her orphanage? Let her see how rich people live. I hope she'll appreciate my impulse. No one has ever been indifferent to an evening spent on a yacht. I think she'll be no exception." The night before the party, Wilson checked everything, made sure his orders were followed exactly. "Isabella, I want to invite you to dinner." The man expected that the girl would be interested in his proposal, but she looked at him indifferently and said, "But I do not understand you. Rich, ready to spend money left and right. Don't know where to put it? Give it to charity. Why go out when I've made a nice dinner at home? I'm a pretty good cook, don't you think? It's not just any dinner." Barely containing his irritation, Christian said, "I'm taking you for a walk along the river." "Yes." Isabella couldn't hide her interest. "But then that changes everything." She jumped to her feet. "I'm ready." "You're going to go in that?" The man was surprised, looking at her worn jeans and stretched t-shirt. "Why, it's not like we're going to a restaurant." Pretending to be a fool, the girl replied, and then she laughed. "Relax, Christian. Give me half an hour and I'll clean myself up. You didn't take my words seriously, did you? We were not taught to behave like this in society, but I know the elementary rules of etiquette." When Isabella emerged from the room, Wilson gasped. Before him stood a gorgeous woman in a dark dress, just above the knees. Her breasts were adorned with a simple gold chain and pendant, and her thick mane of dark brown hair fell loosely around her shoulders. Light makeup made expressive, lively, green eyes. Slender legs in low-heeled shoes were striking. Christian swallowed nervously, imagining how he would caress those beautiful legs. "I'm shocked." It was all he could say, wondering what kind of underwear she was wearing now. "Are we going?" Looking at him haughtily, the girl asked. "Yes, please." The man ushered her into the car. The ship swayed impatiently on the waves. Waiting for the guests, the captain met them on deck, helped them to board gallantly, bowed his head at the sight of the girl. "Good evening," he greeted. "Glad to see you aboard the Aurora. Isabella, would you care for a glass of champagne?" Wilson asked, waving his hand to the waiter. "It will add a little romantic flavor to our evening, and also—" He waved again. "I love music. Do you mind?" In the dim light of the lanterns, 3 musicians appeared, playing a quiet, slow song. "Do you like it?" The man asked his guest, taking a sip of his glass. He took out a gold bracelet from his pocket and put it on Isabella's thin wrist. "I bought it for you." "It's beautiful," the girl replied discreetly. "Is this how you won the hearts of your mistresses? Were they ready to jump into bed with you?" She glanced indifferently at her vis-a-vis. "I wonder how much money you intend to spend on my seduction. I expected something more extraordinary. You obviously have problems with imagination. Did you really expect me to fall for this cheap romantic nonsense? No, I'm glad you're paying attention, but I was expecting something a little more sophisticated. I hope. She shivered, showing she was cold. We won't have to spend the night. You. Boiling, Christian. Ungrateful little brat. What have you seen in your life? Dinner aboard a yacht, with a rich man, the limit of your dreams. I can't believe you don't like it here. Why not? Isabella said calmly. I like it, but I dreamed of it when I was 14. Now I've wised up. It's all contrived, momentary. In half an hour we will finish champagne, eat dessert, and then you will try to seduce me, heated by alcohol. How vulgar, and not at all reciprocated. What do you want? Barely containing the anger ready to burst out. Wilson asked. I don't know. Isabella shrugged. Before you hit me in the heart, I want my soul to turn around and soar. For now, she stood up resolutely from the table. I want to go ashore. So everything I've arranged here, he gestured for the musicians to leave. You don't like it? I didn't say I didn't like it. The girl answered evasively. I said it was too corny to win a woman's heart. All right then, let's go home. They said goodbye to the captain, who gave them a long and surprised look. At home, they went to their rooms. What can I seduce you with? Christian was racking his brain. What? A friend of his told him about his unsuccessful attempt to win a girl's heart. You couldn't handle a hottie? You're getting old, brother. You can't use your old tricks, can you? I should have gotten involved with her. Christian cursed in his heart. I don't know what she wants. Think of something unusual, by the way. I give you an idea. Take her abroad. She probably has not been there. The youth of today, they can't wait to go there. For a poor orphan, it's enough to impress her for a year. Why? The man's on fire. It's not a bad idea. If I get what I want, I'll thank you. You don't have to thank me. I was already wondering how it would end. It's been 2 weeks since Christian prepared the trip abroad. Isabella. Smiling enigmatically, he announced, tomorrow you and I are going on a trip. I hope we won't have to take a boat this time. I can't reveal all the details to you yet. Trust me. Wear loose clothes so you'll be comfortable. I have one condition. What's that? The girl looked at him suspiciously. I'll blindfold you. Until a certain point, you must not know where we are going. Agreed? Do you have to be blindfolded? Yes, otherwise it won't be a surprise. Isabella was blindfolded and brought to the airport. Christian helped her aboard a private plane, and only there was allowed to remove the blindfold. An airplane? The girl asked excitedly, looking out the porthole. All my life, I dreamed of flying in an airplane at least once, so I managed to impress you. Let's put it this way. Isabella said discreetly, I like the fact that we're going somewhere. I'm sorry. A few hours later, Wilson informed. I have to blindfold you again. Isabella was elated in her heart. She had dreamed of traveling for so long. They crossed the helicopter. I want to see where we are. Isabella fidgeted impatiently in the seat. Be patient. The man stopped her. Soon you'll see everything. When the engine died down, Wilson untied the blindfold. Where are we? Isabella exhaled in disbelief. On the roof? We're on a rooftop in Paris, and there's dinner waiting for us. He held out his hand to her and led the way. The girl's breath was taken away by the beauty. The city was visible as in the palm of her hand. The warm wind was developing her dark hair. It was a little scary, but Isabella didn't give any sign. Callie will not believe that I saw the Eiffel Tower with my own eyes. The girl thought. Her heart fluttered with joy, but she didn't want to admit that she was overwhelmed by the incredible adventure. Christian seated her at a table. A waiter appeared from somewhere with a bottle of wine. Another brought hot food. The waitstaff tried to be discreet. "Do you like it?" The man asked, seeing how her green eyes lit up. "I can't say I wasn't moved. It's a little trip," Isabella said. "But I don't understand. Why spend money on meaningless things? I wanted to do something nice for myself. To throw so much money away for an hour's dinner? That's just stupid. Are you trying to make me angry on purpose?" The man spoke softly in a voice that didn't bode well. "Yes, anyone in your place would kiss my feet after such a trip and pray to God for me. I don't see a queue of people falling at your feet in the house." The girl sneered. "Don't forget yourself." He flared up. "I can take you back to where I got you. I'm sick of your antics. So you're admitting defeat? What are you trying to do? I'm waiting for you to admit you lost my bet. Where's that famous seduction technique you've been bragging about on every corner? All you know how to do is throw money around. Of course, what better way to impress a silly orphan than with crisp bills? That's all you're capable of. It doesn't bother me. But that's it. I'm sick of you." Christian turned white with anger. "We're going back immediately. I didn't know you were so nervous." Looking regretfully at Paris lying at her feet, the girl said, "If we are here, why not enjoy the view of the City of Lovers? If I am not mistaken, it is also called the City of Lights. The walk along the rooftops was over. The man's up. You ruined it. A few hours later, they were home. You won the bet." The man announced, "I'm trying to shake you up, and you're like an impregnable fortress under siege. Everything's wrong with you. Everything's wrong with you. You don't like jewelry. You don't like flowers because you have to throw them away. I don't understand what you want. Any woman in your place would have been happy to share my bed, but you persist in pretending indifference. I don't want to continue this game. I'm sick of it, and I don't want to see you either. So pack your things and get out of my house. Everything I gave you, keep it, and get the hell out of here. I want to forget you like a bad dream. Don't you ever set eyes on me again. If you say so." The girl shrugged her shoulders. "Don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone that you can't impress a modern woman with anything. If you say another word," clenched his fists, gritted through his teeth Wilson, "I will not vouch for myself. Will you allow yourself to hit a woman?" She made big eyes, and her heart sank into her heels at the sight of the enraged man. Isabella did not try her luck, silently packed up and left. "Well, what have you achieved?" she pondered, walking through the streets of the city. Left at a broken trough, what to do now? In the most difficult moments, she dialed a familiar number. "Hello, girlfriend. Isabella." She heard a cheerful exclamation on the other end of the line. "I was so afraid for you. I thought you weren't answering your cell phone. What if something terrible happened? I've heard such horror stories about your Wilson. He's not mine." Isabella cut it off. "Don't listen to the gossips. Tell me, how are you doing? I'm wandering around town, wondering what I'm gonna do. Christian kicked me out the door." "That's news." Kelly was amazed. "What are you thinking about? Coming to the orphanage? Or do you want to go back to him? You know, I think he fell in love with me like a boy. I got what I wanted. I made him lose his head. That's why he's mad. What about you? What about me? I don't even like him. Then what are you thinking about? Come back. You'll be welcome here. What am I going to do there? It's too late to go to college. I can't find a place to live right away. Wilson left me some money, of course, but how much is enough? And anyway, why am I showing off?" Suddenly she said, "Marriage to such a man would open many doors. A modeling agency certainly wouldn't be an obstacle. Isabella, are you crazy? You don't love him. Can you imagine what it's like to live with someone you don't love? So what? I don't care if he loves me. I'm looking forward to marriage with him. I don't recognize you, friend, the girl said sadly. You've never been calculating. I didn't expect to be ambitious myself, but with his help I was able to realize all the plans I had made in the orphanage. Aren't you happy for me? His money will open any door. Isn't that what we dreamed of? Are you really willing to live with a man you don't love? His love is enough for the two of us. Isabella shrugged. I've been tormented by doubts, and now that I've talked to you, I'm sure I must go back to him. Isabella, come to your senses, wailed her friend. I know what I'm doing. I'm thinking more rationally now than ever. Bye. Thanks for listening. Isabella hurried home. She hesitantly opened the door, afraid of being ostracized, and reappeared. Wilson was sitting at the table. A bottle of whiskey stood beside her, almost half empty. And that's you? The man looked at her with a cloudy stare. Why did you come here? To make fun of me? Yes, you failed. Who doesn't? I came to tell you that I've agreed to marry you. An unexpected decision. He grinned wryly. I lost, didn't I? If you remember, there was a second part to the bet. If you fall in love with me, we go to register the marriage. You do love me, don't you? What does that change? It changes everything. I agreed to be your wife. You haven't changed your mind about marrying me, have you? Change your mind? Christian sobered up immediately. Yes, I've been dreaming of calling you my wife for months. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a gold ring with a large diamond. You see, I even bought a ring for my future wife. I didn't think it would come in handy so soon. He stood up, walked over to Isabella, took her hand, and put the expensive ring on her ring finger. Will you marry me? Yes, Isabella answered decisively, though it felt as if she had jumped into a whirlpool. Isabella, hello. Hear the woman in the phone, a familiar voice of a friend. Hello, sobbing Isabella answered. Are you crying? Kelly was worried. I hate him. The woman confessed. He ruined my whole life. He hit me. Again? Terrified, exclaimed the girlfriend. Yes, Isabella cried. He came in drunk. I just asked him where he'd been all night, and then he started. He yelled that it was none of my business, and then he hit me. Good thing my son didn't see. I don't understand what happened to him. You always said he loved you. He did, but then it went away, and it all started when I had Brian. He still can't forgive me for finishing college, and I wanted to study. I wasn't going to bury myself in housework. He didn't like it. Good for you for not giving in and finishing your degree, even if it was by correspondence. It's a popular specialty, finance and credit. If something happens, you can always provide for yourself and your son. That's when we started to have disagreements. He was jealous of every pillar. You should have seen how mad he got when I hired a nanny for our boy so I could study. That's when he started hitting the bottle. He'd get drunk. He'd get out of control. The first time he hit me was when I accused him of cheating. You should have heard the way he screamed. I thought he was gonna kill me. Since then, he's never been shy about laying a hand on me. I don't envy you. I think I'm happy. I never felt happy, and now I don't feel happy at all. Alcohol has changed him beyond recognition. No trace of his former love for me. He's disappeared from home more and more often. I know for a fact that he spends his time in the company of strange women. Do you know how disgusting it is to see him with lipstick on his collar? Are you going to put up with that? No, of course not. I kept quiet for a long time, hoping he'd come to his senses, but every year it gets worse. How does he run the firm? That's the point. The firm was starting to die. I realized if I didn't take over, we'd go bankrupt sooner or later. You're doing great. You're gonna do great. Yeah, but I've never worked a day in my specialty. So what? Prove to him and to yourself that you're worth something. You were the smartest among us. You can do it. Isabella puzzled over which side of the firm to revitalize. The first thing she decided to do was to talk to her husband about her son. Christian, I need to consult with you. Having had a moment when he was relatively sober, the woman spoke. What do you want from me? He was irritated, his head ached, he wanted a drink, but Isabella had locked herself in the study with him and wouldn't let him have one. Give me a drink, demanded the man. No, the woman said firmly. Let's talk first. You didn't get anything mixed up. What are you doing bossing me around? Have you forgotten where you belong? I might remind you, if you don't listen to me now, we both risk the abyss. She bravely endured his ominous stare. Well, speak, yes, quickly. I want to send my son to study abroad. What on earth are you talking about? The Christian burst into a fit of rage. I will not give my consent. You'll have to agree. Isabella said calmly, I'm sending him away because I don't have the opportunity to pay much attention to him. Explain? If you don't know, our firm's business is bad. You don't have time to deal with it. You've had other interests lately. The woman sneered. None of your business. Christian snapped at her. I'm fed up with you. Do you think I've forgotten that you decided to study without consulting me? My knowledge will come in handy now. I want to try to keep our firm afloat. What? The man laughed. You. What do you know about business? Without me, you're nothing. If I want, our business will go up, and you take care of the house and the child, and do not interfere where you are not asked. Right now, I need to intervene. I demand that you authorize me to sign documents. On what grounds do you demand it? On the grounds that I'm your lawfully wedded wife. You're going to ruin the firm. We won't lose anything. It'll be dead soon enough, and if I can save the business, fine, to hell with you. You've already succeeded once with me. The man snorted. Call a notary, I'll issue a permit. After all, I can always cancel all contracts. I think you won't have to blush for me. And Isabella began to master. Christian at first freaked out, and when he realized that his wife gradually began to get everything, sang blackly of his own impotence. How many times? The woman was indignant. You drink every day. I need your help so much. Why? You're doing a great job already. But you're experienced, you know the firm inside and out, and I have to learn everything all over again. I told you couldn't do it. I can handle it. Isabella was stubborn. Just don't drink, please. She had no idea that a healthy-looking man could fall victim to an insidious disease. One night she stayed late at work. Why is it so quiet at home? Isabella wondered as she entered the living room. Christian, where are you? Did you go to bed already? I need your advice. I think I've figured out why things aren't going well. She looked into the kitchen. Her husband was nowhere to be found. She opened the bedroom door and was horrified. Christian, what's wrong? Isabella rushed to her husband, who was lying on the floor with his arm tucked under him. Christian, don't frighten me. The man mumbled, writhing in pain as his wife tried to lift him up. Christian? Isabella cried, startled by the realization. You're having a stroke. Wait, I'll call an ambulance. She called the doctor, asked the guards to move her husband to the couch. Unfortunately, you're right, Christian is having a stroke. Confirmed my worst guesses, doctor. His right side is paralyzed. I'll prescribe therapy, of course, but whether he'll make a full recovery, I can't say. We don't know exactly how long it was before you found him. The outcome of the disease depends on that. Doctor. Isabella grabbed the man's arm fearfully. I beg you, don't tell anyone that Christian is paralyzed. If partners and competitors find out about his condition, our business will be ruined. I'll repay you whatever you say, and I'll pay you for your silence. Good. The doctor looked at the woman in surprise. It's up to you. You're in shock now. We'll talk later. One more favor. Help me find a professional nurse for him. That won't be a problem. I promise I'll find the best one. What am I supposed to do now? Pray to God and don't give up hope. Christian, young man, he'll do fine. Isabella is immersed in business. Not a living soul knew that Christian lay a vegetable in their big house. Only the nurse and the cook were allowed to see him. Isabella. One day the secretary informed her, "A rival firm wants to see you." "What is it?" Isabella felt a chill go through her. "They didn't say, but they've set up a meeting for tomorrow at the cafe." "Well, let them know I'm ready to meet." "Oh, and tell the chief accountant I'm expecting 6 months' worth of returns." Half an hour later, the chief accountant showed up. "Isabella," he began, "I don't understand why you're digging through old reports." Chuckling to himself in a mustache, the man asked, "Why should such a pretty head have to bother with such dull figures? Christian, check them. I don't think you'll find anything interesting there." "I'm interested." Trying not to lose her composure, the woman replied, "To understand why lately we've had lucrative deals fall through, why the materials we partially paid for don't arrive on time. You can answer me these questions, can't you?" "Well, my dear," stretching words and hinting that she knows nothing about the affairs of the construction company, said the chief accountant, "It happens, sometimes deals are broken and suppliers let down. It's all business. I need a full report and analysis of the working firm. If you can't give clear answers to my questions, I won't keep you. You're firing me." The man's eyes widened in surprise. "I do not need people who do not cope with their duties, and also let you openly laugh at the head of the firm. You're not the head of the firm. As long as my husband is sick, I am the head of the firm. If you don't want to follow my orders, the door's over there. Do you understand? Instead of helping me to save the firm, you're sticking your fingers in my wheel. Christian is sick, and you're happy to tear up his life's work, you ingrates. My husband has done so much for you. I see you get a good salary, go, work, and that by the evening, the report was on my desk." Isabella said firmly. Shocked by her rebuff, the chief accountant silently went to his office. Can you imagine? The man was indignant. "She told me off like a boy. I've been working in this company for 20 years, she, without a year a week, and already in full command. Who is she anyway?" Supported his colleague. "We have never seen her before in our lives. They say she has not worked. How will she be able to save the company? Did Christian buy her diploma? Yeah, someone gets gold, but she gets a diploma. With that kind of knowledge, she shouldn't be in business. How did she manage to marry Christian? He was a confirmed bachelor. Don't you know how girls like that get married? With a figure like that, a face like that, you could seduce anyone. I can't wait for Christian to come back to us. I know in my heart she'll bring the firm to a standstill. I wonder how she'll sort out the accounts. She probably only knows how to spend money. Why are you going after her? Isabella's got an advocate. Let her try, see if it works out. Christian will be back, and her competitors aren't dormant. You mark my words, they'll try to get their hands on the firm." The next day, Isabella came to the cafe to meet with a representative of a rival firm. "What did you want to tell me?" Without further ado, the woman asked, "How's your health, Christian?" "By your prayers. I don't think you asked me here to ask about Christian's health. Tell me what you wanted to say." "I don't have much time." It has come to our attention, the man spoke softly, that your firm has been experiencing some difficulties in recent months. We'd like to help. Help how? We'd like to buy your firm out of your problems. Why would a pretty woman like you take on a huge business? You don't know much about construction, to put it mildly. Yes, things are a little rough right now, but it's only temporary. Barely restraining, ready to burst out of emotion, said Isabella. We are not going to sell the business. Christian is seriously ill. Will he be able to return to the management of the company? Don't doubt it. He is already on the mend. Perhaps we could meet him then and talk things over. Maybe he'd be interested in our offer. He's got his health to worry about, and the problems at work could aggravate his illness. Shouldn't you be so worried about my husband's health? The doctors are doing all the necessary procedures to get him back on his feet. And by the way, they don't recommend disturbing him. As I said, we have no plans to sell the firm. My husband is in the loop, and I'm coordinating with him. As far as I'm concerned, the business is in a critical state, and we're offering a good price. No, don't persuade me. My husband will soon get back on his feet and figure things out on his own, but in the meantime, I'm doing a good job of running the firm. I hear the employees don't trust you very much. I wonder how you know so much about our firm. Oh, I get it. There's an inside man on the payroll. Let's not talk about that. The man avoided answering. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. Isabella got up from the table. We have nothing more to talk about, so you'll consider our offer? I won't be able to offer such a favorable price next time. My answer is no. Isabella flew to work. We have a mole. How did I not realize? She thought. That explains everything. My job is to find it, and the sooner the better. She meticulously studied every document, even taking her work home. There in silence, she worked easier than under the gaze of subordinates, who frankly laughed behind her back, skeptical of her ability to pull the firm out of a series of bad deals. Imagine that. She complained to her friend. They don't take me seriously. No wonder. Callie laughed. With the way you look. Who's gonna believe you're good at accounting? That you're so smart. I have to find the mole, or our competitors will be working ahead of us. Think, analyze, concentrate, and then everything will work out. And Isabella, day after day, got deeper and deeper into her work. Explain it to me, please. Looking at the contracts, she asked the chief engineer, how come we refused to build a shopping center on such a profitable site? So their geodesist surveyed and concluded that the soil is not suitable for construction. Then why did the competitors start construction on this very territory? I don't know. The man was embarrassed. Who made the decision not to build? That's how he stopped talking. The address of the surveyors who did the report. So he hesitated. That's right. Their firm closed down. How is that possible? Why are you being so secretive? Get me the chief accountant right away. He paid for the work done, right? He must know the address of the company. The chief accountant entered the office cautiously, explained how it happened that the firm, which made a conclusion about the state of the soil on the site on which they planned to build a shopping center, closed immediately after signing the papers. Give me its address. I'll go to deal with it myself. So know the address, mumbled the chief accountant. I wonder how many plots we lost because of this fake firm. The men looked at each other in silence. You both immediately write a letter of resignation. Isabella ordered quietly but firmly. You have no right to fire us. The chief engineer shrieked. We were hired by Christian. Don't you dare poke me. I'm in charge of personnel here now. Get out, both of you. Isabella, the receptionist came flying in. How could you fire the most responsible employees? Christian wouldn't allow it. Christian didn't realize that these responsible employees had recently started working for the competition. Simply put, they were selling out, betraying their boss. If you don't agree with my decision, I will quickly find a replacement for you. Isabella looked at the girl expectantly. She shamefully kept silent. That's fine. Now you need to find replacements for these two honorable people. It is better if it will be found among our employees. Okay, I understand, but what should I tell the staff? I'll figure it out. The girl left, and Isabella took a deep breath, then got up and went to the conference room. Gather me the heads of departments in accounting. I need a lawyer immediately. Right away. The secretary looked at Isabella with respect. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the hall. I fired 2 employees. After a thorough investigation of the firm, it turned out that they were working for competitors. Now I believe our business will be more successful. I need your support. Christian has stepped aside for now. I'll need time to sort things out. If anyone is unhappy with the woman at the helm of the firm, they can report it immediately. The rest of you, I demand full commitment. If you have any candidates in mind, I don't mind reviewing their resumes. Any questions? Then let's get to work. The employees came out of the meeting puzzled. So much for the model. They marveled. And we laughed at her, but she was so clever. Even Christian could not find the moles, and she quickly identified them. So how could those who started the firm with him be suspicious? Don't get too excited before the competition finds out Christian's doing badly. If no one tells, maybe it'll be all right. But the competitors weren't dormant. Wilson's business was too tasty. They were getting closer and closer to the firm, probing for weaknesses. Isabella realized their lost interest was temporary. Isabella. One day, a secretary came flying into the office. I tried to stop them, but you shouldn't try to stop me. Pushing the secretary away, a handsome young man entered the office with a brisk stride. Isabella noted his lean figure, thick, dark hair, and brown eyes that glowed with mockery. He sat down in the chair uninvited. It's nothing to worry about. The woman calmed the secretary. I'll take care of it. Who are you? She asked as the door closed behind the girl. My name is Charles. I'm offering to sell me your firm. What makes you think I'm going to sell it? I'm aware of your problems. You're not the first to know my problems, but I'm the first to tell you we're going to get this thing back on track. If you have no more questions for me, please leave the office. You're interfering with my work, or I'll have to call security. I know Christian is paralyzed. He can't go back to work, and you don't know anything about construction. I'm amazed at your knowledge. Isabella looked mockingly at the intruder, but her heart clenched with fear. But Christian will be fine, and I'm not bad with finances, for your information. I'll make sure you can't sign any lucrative contracts. Are you threatening me? In return, when Christian comes back to the firm, and he will, you'll be in trouble. We have a good reputation. You will not be able to ruin the business. If you do not leave, I will dig up dirt on you. I've already got material on how you've been diverting customers away from us through front men. I'll make it public. Are you willing to risk it? You bet your ass I will. Christian will back me up. He knows everything that goes on around the firm. If you try to destroy us, I won't stand by and retaliate. Bitch, the man hissed. It was nice to meet you. The woman smiled through force. She was nervous, her lips trembling. I dare not delay you any longer. I'm leaving, but I'll be back. Good riddance. Left alone, Isabella, without strength, leaned back in her chair and cried. Isabella, are you all right? Alarmed, her secretary asked, entering the office after the guest had left. Would you like me to make you some tea? Thank you, I'd appreciate it. And you are good, the secretary said, putting a cup with steaming tea. No one believed that you could manage the firm. I didn't believe it myself. Tiredly replied the woman. I had to learn no one knows what will happen to us next. I will not be left alone for a long time, these businessmen. You have successfully won the first battle. I think this is just the beginning. How much do I miss Christian? He's been in a borderline state for almost a month. There was a phone call. Isabella? The woman on the phone heard the excited voice of the nurse. Christian, he's awake. Roger, on my way. What's wrong? The secretary asked, seeing the change in her face. Christian came to his senses. I'm leaving now. Don't tell anyone yet. Isabella hurried home. She didn't know how she saw her husband and was afraid to meet him. Are you here? He turned his head at the sound of the creaking door. Christian spoke slurred. Isabella rather read his lips what he said. He was pale, a wry grin on his face, saliva flowing helplessly from the corner of his mouth. I'm glad you've come to your senses. She crouched carefully beside him on the bed, wiped his chin with a napkin. Leave us alone, she asked the nurse. How are you? There is no more of me, just a semblance of a human being. The man tried to smile. His face twisted even more. What about the firm? Did you manage to sell it? I managed to save the firm. You did? Christian's eyes flashed first with bewilderment, then surprise, then joy, then tears. I didn't believe in you. I was sure we were ruined. Think about it. How could I let everything you've built up over the years go to waste? How did you do it? I scrutinized the documents and found the moles. Who? The man marveled. Who are they? Your main assistants. I don't believe it. It's a good thing I didn't have an old friendship with them. I couldn't trust anyone, so I evaluated everyone with a cold head, and that's how I found the traitors. And our business immediately went better. The staff found in the firm, people responsible, most importantly, they believed me. It was difficult to shut the mouth of competitors. They were ready to swallow us, but it was not to be. I am not one of the fearful. I remember. Christian grinned with difficulty. I was able to fend off the first 2 attacks. The woman was silent, but we hope for your recovery. That you've come to your senses is a good sign. I'm not deceived. He looked at his wife carefully, and I realize my present condition is only a temporary improvement. I feel I don't have much time left. Don't say that. Hotly, Isabella exclaimed. You'll make it. No, I'm done for. I'm not getting my hopes up. He closed his eyes and was silent. Tell me, did you love me a little? He asked, after a moment's pause, looking pitifully at his wife. Don't lie to me. I want to know the truth. No. Quietly confessed the woman. I never loved you. I knew I felt you didn't love me, but I had hoped so much to be wrong. You're legendary in business circles, even have your own admirers. Ah, she picked up on Charles' mocking tone. I thought you were here to take over the firm again. I have another suggestion. Why don't we merge our firms? I'm doing fine. I don't need anyone's help. Isabella. Charles came very close to her, handed her flowers. She buried her face in them, savoring the fragrance. I liked you right away, that memorable meeting. I didn't expect to be rebuffed. I was told you were a beautiful doll with no brains, but I realized from the first minute that you were a smart and confident woman. I was afraid to admit even to myself that I was in love. You know, it happens, but you were married at the time, and then the funeral. I didn't want to be intrusive. I decided to wait, but now you're free. Why can't I tell you that I like you? And you come to me so easily after the threats I heard from you in my office? Forgive me, I'm ready to beg your forgiveness. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. In the fight against the competition, all means are good. I'm sorry. I realized long ago that I was wrong. You have a good tongue. Isabella laughed. It's the excitement, Charles confessed. What is it? Can I expect reciprocation? Charles, the woman grew serious. I do not want to give you hope, so I confess at once, I am not ready for a serious relationship. I've had some unfortunate experiences in married life. I'm just now beginning to live, to breathe. I was deprived of all this for many years to break free from dependence on my husband. It cost me a lot of labor and nerves. You can't imagine what I've been through. To go back into the care of another man? No way. I assure you, I won't restrict your freedom. I wish I could believe you, but I can't. Is there any hope that someday you'll reciprocate? I don't know. We don't know each other very well. Well, let's get to know each other. Charles came to life. I'm inviting you to a restaurant tonight. No need. Isabella headed for the car. I like to have dinner at home with my son. How do you feel about children, by the way? I didn't know you had a son. The man was surprised. Christian never talked about him. He probably never said anything about me either. The woman grinned. Yes, I have a son, and you'll have to earn his favor if you're going to court me. Did I scare you? So you'll let me court you? I'm ready. The persistent suitor has perked up. Invite me to visit. I want to make sure that you are not only smart and beautiful, but also a good cook. If that's the case, then you're definitely my woman. Isabella got into the car, started it, carefully placed the bouquet next to her. The man looked at her with regret. Suddenly, she rolled down the window. If you want, come to visit me on Sunday afternoon. I'll introduce you to my son and feed you lunch. I'll definitely come. Charles exclaimed joyfully, looking at the car in which the amazing woman was sitting. I won't let you go anywhere. He promised. I will do everything I can to make you learn to trust again. My love can warm your soul. I promise you that we will be happy.
Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Michael took a pack of Marlboro Gold out of his pocket, unwrapped the cellophane wrapping, took out a cigarette, and held up the lighter. Taking 2 deep puffs, he looked around and thought a little. For the last 10 years of his life, he had been pedantically living on a schedule. He liked everything to be on time, and hated people who were late. Michael calculated even little things like time to get on the platform and have time to smoke a cigarette before the train arrived. There were few people around. He was in a distant and small town, popularly called the hinterland. Michael was even surprised that there was a train station here. Suddenly, he felt some movement on his right. Turning his head, the man saw a short girl. She was wearing a simple dress, white and sneakers. She was carrying a heavy bag, but her pretty head with nice facial features was a red beret, which now and then struggled with a large braid of her dark hair. The girl with elegant sloppiness and was correcting the beret while trying to keep her bags in her hands. Michael looked at her sympathetically, tossed out a flick of the cigarette he had started, and went to help. Shaking his head slightly, he pronounced, "It's a bit heavy. Such a small girl to carry such heavy bags." Then he calmly took her luggage and they headed towards the train. "Oh, thank you very much." She thanked him. "What would I do without you? I'm here for my fiance's food." The girl looked at the man so sincerely that his heart gave a little twinge inside. She had big blue eyes and a dazzling smile. A smile that could make anyone speechless with admiration. Michael had not felt such feelings for a long time and did not understand what was happening to him. Then the girl asked, "Which carriage are you in?" "In the 9th, smiled the man. "Yes, and me too." Could I?" Michael didn't let her finish, and at that moment he smiled even wider. Some part of him felt like a complete idiot. Meanwhile, the train was approaching the platform. Two grandmothers sitting on a bench stood up and walked duck-like toward the cars. The train had only been stopped for 3 minutes, so the passengers on the platform scurried about. Michael and the girl quickened their step and quickly reached the 9th carriage. The conductor routinely checked their passports. Michael picked up their bags, and they were already walking down the corridor. "What compartment do you have?" he asked. "8th," the girl smiled. "And you?" "There you go." What a coincidence, he thought. Maybe we will go to the same station with her. Then he said, "It turns out we're neighbors. I'm in 8th grade too." "Wow, how it happens." The girl laughed. "So you didn't meet me by chance?" "I guess so." They went into the compartment. He put away in bags on the bottom shelf. She took out a bag from one of them and told Michael to get out so that she could change. The man stepped out into the corridor, leaned back and on his errand, and stared out the window at the summer afternoon heat. The train touched down and glimmered with. Michael saw endless green fields, and quite a large state of thought flowed easily in his head under the clatter of the train wheels. It's been a long time since he had been to his homeland, he thought. Homeland and Michael called not the city where his parents lived, but his grandmother's village. He used to spend vacations there when he was a boy. He and the other boys used to go fishing, ride bicycles, swim in the river, grill kebabs, and build a shisha. And when the weather was rainy, they would gather at his or Max's house, playing board games all day, or was that it? It was a glorious time, easy and carefree. He still kept in touch with some of the boys. Whenever possible, Michael tried to visit his parents and then stop by his grandmother's house when it was the weekend or when he went on vacation. But 3 years ago, his grandmother passed away. Michael loved her very much and took the loss very hard. He could not come to the funeral because he was on a business trip abroad for a long time. He tried to ask for an excuse, but his superiors wouldn't let him. As his supervisor William, with whom they'd always had a great relationship, put it, "Mike, honey, but I can't let you go. You know, not even for 3 days. You're too important around here. You go away, and it's all over at once. Do you know how important our work is? Everyone understands. It's a tragedy. Your family's grieving, but my hands are tied. Understand that. Do your job, and I'll clap so you can get a bonus." And only 3 years later, after a long business trip, he still managed to come to his homeland. He paid off his parents. They talked about this and that. Again, they asked when he would get married. But Michael had no one in mind. Then, when he was about to leave, his mother recommended that he take the train to his grandmother's village. She also told him where her grave was. Michael sank a little into his childhood memories. Suddenly, he heard he could leave. "I'm all done now." The girl wore a gray tracksuit and slippers. But even in spite of this appearance, she was charming. To himself, the man called her Cinderella. "I'll run and get you some tea." Michael did not like intimate conversations on the train with strangers, and he didn't really want tea. But to refuse such a nice girl was uncomfortable. So he said yes, go ahead. Try entered the compartment. Carefully, holding in her hands 2 steaming mugs of tea, she set them on the table, and Michael thanked her. He began to consider her even in that sports sweatshirt, and you could make out her beautiful figure. Without the birch, it was as if her braid had become twice as big. The girl looked thoughtfully out of the window. Simple country beauty, Michael thought. "My name is Becky," the girl said unexpectedly and extended a gentle palm to Michael. He shook her fingers, looked into her eyes, and answered Becky. "Becky then, and I'm Mike." "Michael then," the girl joked. He smiled at her. Then she asked him to stand up, pulled out her bag and started getting food out of it. Apple pie, candy, cucumbers, tomatoes, eggs, green onions, and bread. Will it be a week's ride on the train? Michael thought to himself. "Mike, and you do not look just so," said the girl. "Treats the whole pie tea." "Try it. I made it myself. It's delicious." "No, Becky, thanks. I ate at my mom's before I went out until I was hungry." "Oh well, okay, shrug. But if you want some, feel free to have some." There was a kind of emptiness in the man's mind. mixed with a strange excitement. He realized he liked her. The girl was attractive, but she has a fiancé, Michael told himself. You have to behave yourself. Damn, but she's really pretty. I'm going to the end of the line. Becky interrupted his thoughts. You're the one who'll have to put up with me for 24 hours, Michael joked. At that, he felt his heart beat joyfully. Becky laughed, covered her mouth with her hand, and said, No, I think you're very nice and kind. Thank you. And I'm going to the military unit. I have Alex mine. You know where it is? Oh, come on. Michael marveled at those words. Of course he knew. First of all, the military unit was only 1 in 20 kilometers from my grandmother's village. In the second place, he was also going to that unit because he was a military man. Ironically, his command had sent him there to serve. Further orders. Seriously not hiding his surprise, exclaimed Michael. Almost choked on his tea. Oh, I'm sorry, I said something wrong. No, it's just that I have to go to the military unit too. Really, such a coincidence. The girl was amazed. What about you? Are you in the military too? Well, you're military. Military, he nodded and drank his tea. He was getting uncomfortable. So you probably know my Alex. Michael looked at her in surprise. Alex Loud is a chief warrant officer. He has a funny last name. My mom always swears how I will marry before him with such a surname. The girl laughed, and I've already decided everything for myself. You know that I will be with my last name entirely. I like it better than Loud. What's your last name? Morris. Loud, Michael said. And so he started to change it in conversation. Oh, do you have a non-military last name? No, I'm sorry, but no offense. If I knew you, I'd think you sold toys to kids. You're just so kind and your last name is so cute. Why are you frowning? I said something wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, my mom always tells me I'm always saying the wrong thing. No, it's okay. Michael tried to speak neutrally, not to give vent to his emotions, as he was always taught in the service. I know you're Alex, he said and drank his tea again. There were different bad rumors about Alex Michael. Michael knew that he was not a fool to drink and often found himself on duty drunk. He was also accused several times of stealing military property, but nothing could be proved. To think, Michael thought to himself, such a beautiful girl, and got involved with a swindler and an alcoholic. How is it possible? Why do girls always fall in love with some assholes? But maybe he'll change with her. Maybe he changed for her. No, I saw his personnel file the other day. He's not fired just because there's no staff. That's what I have to say now. What do you know about my Alex? By the way, he's going to study to be a lieutenant. He's tired of being a chief warrant officer. What's your rank? Captain. Michael said dryly. Wow. And that's how many stars on your epaulets? 5, asked Becky. And the man laughed heartily, not smart girls in military matters, and said 5 stars Becky only in Turkish hotels. And the captain has 4 stars. And she stretched out understandably. And can I speak to you? Unexpectedly suggested Michael. And let's. Becky agreed and again extended him a lovely hand. Wonderful. Where is it? You met Alex. I've been friends with him since high school. He was in the same class as me. In 10th grade, we started talking a lot, and in 11th grade on September 1st. Can you imagine, he took me to the park for a walk by the hand, took me and said, I can't live without you. The girl is very talented, portrayed the intonation of a lover. What made the 2 traveling companions laugh? That's what he said. Michael asked. That's what he said. So we started dating there. We graduated high school together. I went to our local institute. My dream is to study hard and go to school to work. I want to teach children Russian language and literature. How nice, Michael thought. And my Alex after school served a year in the same unit. By the way, I went to him all the time, as now I was waiting for him. He came back and said he would marry me. But first he'll go to warrant officer school. You like the military very much. That's the whole story. I wanted to become an ensign quickly and return to the units. He also said that military men get apartments. When he graduates, he'll marry me. And we'll already have an apartment. It's great, isn't it? Do they already give apartments to military men? Michael replied, the state provides a serviceman with an apartment at the place of his service. A social lease agreement is drawn up there. Alex told me the same thing, I think, so we are all waiting. But the apartment is still missing. Alex says he's on some waiting list, and they won't give us an apartment yet. And I really need it, Becky said, a little irritated. No, by the way, it's already 22, and I'm still living with my parents. All my girlfriends laugh at me. They've all gotten married. Some didn't have kids anymore, some left our town. Husbands, families. And I'm even called an old maid. Can you imagine? It's a shame. So I keep asking Alex, when will we get an apartment? When? There's a clue. I say I'll go to work together and we'll take out a mortgage. No big deal, we'll pay it off. And he said he's out of his mind. You're going to work for these banks all your life. Where's the apartment? I'm waiting, you wait, and don't show off. Can you imagine? They can't do anything normal in the country. They promise everything. Oh, Becky sighed sadly at the end of her monologue. For a while, the fellow travelers rode in silence behind the window in a single green canvas left landscape. The train was traveling very fast, swaying slightly. The sun had already left the zenith and was lazily descending to the horizon. It was a little stuffy in the compartment, so Becky picked up a book and waved it away. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. You're asking yourself, the girl said. It's the atmosphere, Michael remarked. It's a train compartment. You want to talk about life. Sometimes I've heard that people open up to fellow travelers more than to friends or family. Something about them on the road. Becky was silent for a moment, looking out the window of the train. Then she said, everybody in town drinks, it's so scary. My mother was a drinker all her life. My father died 2 years ago, kidney failure, so I was raised by my grandmother. She's my whole life. Never had a drop of alcohol in her entire life. Neither have I. How did I see all this? Oh, I'm not like that, guys. It's not for me. I'd rather study. And Alex is my drinking buddy, too. We've had a few fights about it. He keeps telling me to quit. I'll quit. When I marry you, I'll quit. I get a lieutenant. I'll quit. I'll quit. Yeah, Becky just started twiddling her thumbs. No apartment, no lieutenant, no marriage. Can you imagine? Oh, at least I'm drinking less. It's not what it used to be. But who knows? The man looked out the window. They were driving over a bridge over a river. There was a small village on the bank. Then the endless forest began again. Are you married? Becky asked. Michael answered sadly. Oh, I'm sorry, please, worried the girl. I didn't mean to. It's okay. Are you divorced? Yes. Why did the feelings disappear? I don't know, shrugged Michael. Were there feelings there at all? I think she had more feelings for my wallet. I'm a military man, and my salary is good. I was on business trips, and they gave me an apartment, by the way. So she had her eye on me. I took care of her. Beautiful, I gave her expensive gifts. My father, I remember, was always against this marriage. He used to tell me, oh, I don't like Mike, it's your Kate. Oh, I don't like her. And I was so much in love with her, I didn't see or hear a thing. And that girl was just a plain old hustler. She came from some distant town to conquer Moscow. She saw me and realized there was something to be gained here. I proposed to her, and she had her head wrapped around my neck. 3 years of marriage, but I was always traveling on business. She needed a bigger apartment or a car. I took her to the sea twice a year. And children? Did she want children? Becky asked. Michael waved his hand. She was interested in nothing but money. Too bad I realized it only after the divorce. So then, I come from a business trip, I open the door to the apartment, and there she is with her lover. Becky guessed. Madame, you think like a detective. I am still a mademoiselle. Coquettishly replied Becky, shooting her eyes at Michael. Then she felt a pleasant warmth spread through his body. I haven't been married yet. Well, Michael continued. Here we have a divorce of the maiden name. And you loved her? Becky asked sympathetically. Very quietly said Michael. You're bound to find someone better. She'll love you. She'll give birth to a bunch of kids, a whole company of soldiers. The girl laughed. Well, yes, the division supported her joke, Mike. No, really. Here you are, a young and handsome captain with an apartment, with money. An enviable groom, I must say. The girl comically carried her arms at her sides, playfully moving her shoulders. Does she really like me? Is she flirting with me? Michael thought, looking at her. The two of them laughed. Then Becky asked, after her, didn't you have anyone else? Did you look for one? When to look for Sink, I'm always on business trips. I see, she sighed. They spent the rest of the day in silence. Becky read a book. Michael napped for a bit. There were a couple of stops in equally distant villages, but no one sat in the compartment. He would go out to smoke on the platform and watch people get out of the carriage. At one station, he bought potato pies from his grandmother and appetizingly sliced them with tea. It didn't take long for dusk to come, and then night. There were many stars in the sky, the moon was shining brightly, and the lanterns ran caressingly through the windows of the compartment. Becky turned off the lamp and pronounced, "But good night." "Good night," Michael replied. But he could not sleep. He thought about his life, and recently from a business trip. He also looked at the sleeping Becky for a long time. He liked her. He even imagined how great it would be to live with her. You come back from a hard service, and such a beautiful girl meets you, feeds you, caresses you, puts you to bed. And her children would be very beautiful and healthy. No, what are you thinking? She's almost married. How so? Alcoholics themselves. But it's her choice. Okay, what's that got to do with you? Yeah, and then you think she'll be waiting for you on another business trip or hot spot. No, and she won't miss you. She is. Oh, and beautiful. He only slept for 45 minutes, waking up at 6:00 a.m. from his alarm clock. The man quickly headed for the restroom. The train outside the window was enough and over the fields. Were the orange colors riotous? At the mice in the restroom, he looked at himself in the mirror, brushed his teeth, went back in. Becky was already awake. Good morning, he smiled. Morning, Becky smiled at him and stretched sweetly. He couldn't help but notice the way the girl slid her eyes over his shoulders and biceps. Michael was in excellent physical shape and exercised regularly. He was wearing a calfskin shirt and blue shorts. How did you sleep? He asked. I always sleep well on the train. I get carsick. And you? I hardly slept at all. Really? Yes? Oh, that must be hard for you. Becky sympathized. Come on, Michael replied with boyish glee. I'm used to it. Do you want tea or coffee? Oh, thanks. Can I get a coffee? 3. One that you walk well in. Fine as long as my teeth are cleaner. While the girl was in the restroom, and Michael took coffee from the conductor and returned to the compartment. He took a black one without sugar. The girl came back with a towel around her neck. She unbraided her braid and gathered her long, dark brown hair into a ponytail that reached almost to the end of her shoulder blades. She thanked Michael, sat down across from him, and pulled out more food sausage wrapped in foil, cheese, bread, croissant, and vegetables. They had an appetizing breakfast, chatting sweetly as the sun appeared from beyond the horizon. A new day was beginning. There was one more stop for 3 minutes before the terminus. Michael decided to go out for a smoke. When the train stopped, he left the compartment, closed the door, took a couple of steps, and realized that he had forgotten his lighter on the table. He quickly returned, opened the door sharply, and right into his hands fell Becky. The man held her beautiful body, his palms ending up in her Natalia's. Becky's head rested against his chest. She raised her head and their eyes met. It seemed to her that the space was filled with lightning. Oh, said the girl embarrassedly, pouring paint. Why did you come back? I thought you were going for a smoke. Yes, I was lost in words, Michael, looking at the beautiful face of the girl. God, she's so beautiful. Then he came to his senses and said, I left my lighter on the table. She gently began to push him away with her palms and said, laughing, and I wanted to go to the bathroom. And here you are once of the door, but take the lighter quickly. It's a parking lot. It's only 3 minutes. Wait, and then on the platform and greedily pulling Michael, thought how it was lucky I forgot the lighter. He remembered her big-eyed hands, as if he could still feel her spouse and her body. Becky watched him from the window. She thought of his strong arms. He also smelled so nice. She wanted to drown in that smell. She wanted him to hold her again, but not as an occasional traveler, but as a man in love. No, what can she do? She's been with Alexa a long time. What other people will think? And then he and her husband will be in the same unit. So you have to pull yourself together. It's better to be in his hands again and not think about anything. Michael came back smelling of tobacco. They looked at each other and smiled. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Becky pretended to be very interested in reading the book. Michael kept trying not to look at her, which was very hard for him. Soon they arrived at the final station. The man helped Becky to lower the bags. They stepped back a little. "Well, I guess we should catch a car. Make arrangements," Becky said, glancing at the drivers, who were already looking at them like kites. "Do you want to go for a walk?" Mike suddenly suggested. He felt as if the words were spoken by someone else. The girl looked at him in surprise, but in her eyes there was interest and a little coquetry. "Let's take a walk. It's only 4 kilometers to grandmother's village. Let's walk along the field. It's going to be so beautiful. When I was a kid, I used to walk around the village all the time. I'll show you grandma's house." "So your grandmother lives nearby?" "Yeah. Why didn't you tell me before?" "Yeah," Michael scratched his head. The conversation wasn't working out. But it's clear that for a while the girl thought Michael really wanted her to go with him. He felt like a child waiting for his mom to hand him a present from Santa Claus. "Let's go for a walk," said Becky. "Oh, wait, what about my bags?" "You'll have a hard time carrying them, won't you? And they can leave them in the luggage room at the station," replied Mike. "We'll walk in the village, then take the bus. We'll come back here, pick up the bags, and go to the unit. How's that sound?" "It's tempting. Alex doesn't get off till 4 o'clock anyway." "What did he tell me?" "There's plenty of time." They left their bags in the luggage room and were given the number 215. Then Michael led her along the field along a road he had taken many times when he visited his grandmother. Very often he would ride his bike to meet the boys, dawn and see off the sunset. And this birch tree was the first time he kissed a girl. He was 13 at the time. They were walking. Watching the tall grass move in the wind in a field in the distance was a forest. Michael used to tell us as a child, "Grandma will probably be glad when she sees you," Becky said. "Does she know you're coming, or is it a surprise?" "Well, she died 3 years ago." "Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, please." It was the first time she called him Mike since they'd been together. "What's the matter?" "1 minute it's the wife, 1 minute it's the grandmother." "No, it's okay," Michael reassured her. "It's not your fault. How could you have known?" "I didn't say anything. Anyway, I wanted to go to my grandmother's grave. I wasn't at her funeral because I was on a business trip." Then he paused, as if collecting his thoughts. "It's weird, you're a strange girl. I'm taking you to my village for some reason. I told you I'm going to my grandmother's grave. Why am I suddenly taking you with me? You were not afraid of me." "No," smiled the girl. "I trust you. I feel that you are a good man and that you speak the truth. And if a man is a scoundrel, I can recognize it from a mile away," Becky said and lightly stroked his shoulder. Michael felt warm inside again. "Believe me, for my 22 years I have seen different people in my life, and many of my beauty wanted to take advantage of. Well, for what purposes? But I feel like you don't have that nasty stuff in you. You're a good person. Tell me more about your childhood. Are you that interesting to listen to?" They moved on, and he kept feeling the touch of her hand on his shoulder. He felt warm inside from her voice, from the smell of her hair, from her look, from her laughter. Becky, on the other hand, felt very calm, as if she was completely safe and could fear nothing more. Everything was getting softer inside her. She wanted to stroke his mighty arm and to stare into his eyes for a long time. And Michael talked merrily and nonstop about his childhood, about the village, about his grandmother. Becky laughed, wondered, laughed loudly, pushing Michael on the shoulder. He told about playing soccer with the boys. One of the boys kicked the ball and broke the windows in Nikolaevich's house. He jumped out of the house and ran after them, swearing funny words. Then how Michael caught a big pike in the river and became the first guy in the village. How he tried pot and moonshine with his friends for the first time. How he fell in love with Anna and asked her out at night. How he and Ben made a bungee cord and jumped off it all summer long. She listened to him and listened to him. Slowly, the houses of the village began to appear. I was thinking, Becky began, I guess we grew up in the same town, didn't we? Michael agreed. How come I've never met you before and never knew you? So I'm older than you. So what? How old are you? 30. Well, you're only 8 years older than me. We must have crossed paths sometime. What school did you go to? 9th. I was in 4th. What neighborhood did you live in downtown, you? I lived on South Side. You know where that is? Yeah, I do. It's a small town. That's what I'm saying. I'm surprised we haven't seen each other before. Becky. I left for military school when I was 18. You were only 10. How and where would we have crossed paths? Yes, while you were at home playing with dolls, I was already playing with boys in the yard, and even tried cigarettes. Yeah, Becky said. I was very young. Do you know Ustinov? No, I don't. Well, he's a cab driver now, and he used to make fun of me. It's hard for you not to, Michael complimented. Becky laughed and blushed a little. Who else? Maybe you know someone named William Jensen. No, I don't. Or I taught Brunson. My best friend since we were in diapers. No. The man kept smiling. Jenna. Corver's got the whole crew. Well, Alex ended up there too. I don't know. I know Ethan Simmons. Yeah, and to think. Martin Nance, you know him? Have you ever talked to him? The man was surprised. Well, the other guys were with him. He's in one company or the other. He's a drug addict. Yeah, they say he threw himself out of a window a year ago. While he was in the hospital. 6. Congratulations, Michael said. Of all the mutual acquaintances in our town, the only one we have in common is Martin Nance, the junkie. It's nice when such wonderful people bring other wonderful people together. Becky started laughing very loud and long. Michael looked at her and smiled. He liked being funny to her. He wanted to hear her laugh more and more often, probably for the rest of my life. Oh, we're getting close to the village, aren't we? My grandmother's cottage was my grandmother's cottage, Michael said. What's wrong with it now? Becky asked. For 3 years it's been empty. My father took everything out of there and boarded up the doors. It was decided to sell. The parents needed money. I help them as I can, but still not enough. Their paychecks are often late, and they have to pay the rent. They wanted to sell the house and put the proceeds into a mortgage. They put up an ad, but they haven't had a buyer in 3 years. Can you imagine how that could happen? And when I got back from my business trip, some guy came along. Tomorrow my father will come here, show him the plot, and negotiate with him. Well, he already wants to buy it. So technically this plot is still ours, but soon it won't be. Now it makes me sad. Becky asked sympathetically. A little, said Michael. This is where my happiest moments were. I remember my grandmother's apple pies. I come running hungry in the evening, but I fly at them like locusts, eat everything, and she looks at me and smiles. Eat, eat, sweetie. Then I go on with the boys to run around, and she sits down to cut a sweater for winter for me or my father. A tear glistened in the man's eyes. Commander, do you have a cigarette? Michael was awakened from his thoughts by an unpleasant shout. He looked to the right and saw 2 guys about 25 years old. They were sitting on a pile of firewood and seeing him and the girl, headed in their direction. Why wouldn't they? Tense? Asked Michael, trying to remain calm. Becky instinctively hid a little behind his back. The young man approached and carelessly took 2 cigarettes out of Michael's pack. He was wearing a calfskin and no visor. The pungent odor of alcohol hit the captain's nostrils. It was obvious they had been drinking for more than a day. He gave his friend a cigarette, and they smoked with matches. Not from around here themselves? Asked the unpleasant villager. No, Michael said calmly. I grew up here. I've come for a walk around my hometown. I see. Listen, can I give you the whole pack of cigarettes to A? We've been sitting all day without a smoke. Michael was surprised by such an unexpected and impudent request and asked, Can't you buy a pack of cigarettes? The stall around the corner. Imagine, no fate. Stupid laughing is over, comrades. We're out of money, we drank it all. So give me a pack. Hey, buddy, how about I leave you a couple more cigarettes and we'll go? All right. Michael tried to speak neutrally and politely, but the rage inside him was beginning to curdle. You're holding us up. No, let's do it this way, the guy answered him. You give me a bundle for one of your girls and get the fuck out of here. Your girl's prettier. Becky was very scared, instinctively hiding behind Michael's back. He realized that a conflict was brewing, which apparently could not be avoided by peaceful means. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. In a flash, Michael unnoticeably grabbed the bully's hand, holding a knife. Then he made a throw, and he fell flat on the pavement like a rag doll. Michael pulled out the knife and broke his arm. He screamed, "Let go of my arm, asshole." Michael looked at his friend. Do you want to join us? It's not me. I think I'll go, he answered, frightened. And then he ran so that his heels glistened. The other one continued to lie on the pavement. His face was contorted with a grimace of pain. You're wondering, Michael smiled. Yes, go. You answered him that one. Okay. And now he gave him a little pressure on his elbow, and he squealed to the whole village. A couple of people came out of the neighboring houses to see what was going on. The guy suddenly became a baby voice. I surrender, let go of my arm. And the magic word, please, that's not all, Michael said. Apologize to the girl. What do you want me to put more pressure on my hand? No, girl, please apologize to me and my friend. You know him. Michael looked at the frightened Becky. She was nodding machinely. But well said, Michael, and let go of his adversary. Go on. He kicked him so that he fell into a nearby ditch. The bully stood up helplessly, rubbing his arm and writhing in pain. He glared angrily at Michael and then headed after his friend, who was already a small dot. Somewhere on the horizon, Becky calmed down a bit and looked at Michael with loving eyes. They were silent for a while, looking at each other, and then looked away embarrassed. The man blushed and said, We were going to my grandmother's house. Yeah, let's go, Becky replied. Soon they approached the property. He opened the rusty lock of the gate. Inside everything was overgrown, tall weeds and weeds. The old blue two-story house was lost in paint, as if it was slightly askew, and looked at them pitifully. Michael and Becky walked down the path to the gazebo. They sat down. He pulled a water bottle out of his backpack and offered Becky one. She thanked him and took a few glatters. Gradually, the summer heat began to kick in, and the moisture blissfully wafted down her beautiful body. Michael took out a cigarette and smoked thoughtfully. A rooster crowed in the distance, a breeze blew, mansions on the property. The man and the girl were silent for a long time. Michael was absorbed in his thoughts. Becky sat and thought that she would like to walk with him all day in the village and in the woods, listening to his interesting stories and laughing at the top of her voice. She hadn't felt this good in a long time. She liked him. Becky was very afraid to admit it to herself, but she could no longer deny the obvious and deceive herself. She liked him, and Alex was somehow pushed to the background. Not even to the background, but to some very distant one. It was as if he had become a complete stranger to her. She didn't want to go to him, but Mike was so dear, so warm, so real. She looked at him with her hand on her cheek. For some reason, she wanted to ask him, Where did you learn to do that? What don't you understand, Michael? You know the tricks of the trade. Becky said, embarrassed. I've only seen that in movies before, and here you are. And this floor indifferently answered Michael. And I've been practicing hand-to-hand combat for 6 years. Wow, the girl exclaimed. Yes, my father brought me. You know where the museum is, don't you? Of course I do. Well, there was a school in the basement. I practiced until I was 18 years old. And in the army, continued the instructor. I had such a cool, also military, such a stocky man with a bushy mustache and a mixed suit. Uncle Zach was his name. He'd been through Vietnam. He came back from a hot spot and decided to open his own section. He was a cheerful man, kind, but strict. He praised me very much. Others even resented that I was his favorite. I won medals and cups in competitions. At home, my mom still has the whole wall in them. Quietly laughed Michael, and then continued standing there collecting dust. Why do they have to collect dust right away? Becky shared. You tried, fought, won. Well, yes, perhaps, agreed the man. Listen, did you visit Uncle Zach when you were at Mom and Dad's? Sure, that's a given. I come to see Uncle Vita every time I visit, standard procedure. He taught me a lot not only in terms of sports, but also in life. A wise man, so very wise. This time I came, I thought we'd do the old scheme in his coach's room. A couple of daisies, and then we'd go back to our old ways. And he told me, Mike, I've given up drinking. 2 years ago, I can still pour tea. I quit smoking too, by the way. Can you imagine, at 55 years old, a man just quit? Good for him. I'd like to quit smoking too. I don't drink very rarely anyway. And never got drunk. Michael summed up, smoking a cigarette and carefully put out the butt on the ground. Then he threw it into a rusty bucket that stood nearby and looked at Becky. Their gazes met again. She took her hand away from her face and put it on the table in the gazebo. Then she said to Michael, "Thank you for protecting me." Looking into her eyes, he touched her hand with his fingers and then placed his palm on it. Becky wanted to pull her hand away, but his palm was so nice, so hot. Michael could feel the girl struggling a little, but then he realized that she felt good when his strong hand touched her. For a while, they looked at each other in silence. A blush began to flood their cheeks. Finally, Michael said softly, "So beautiful. You were made to be protected and cherished at all times." She felt a huge and pleasant wave arising in the center of her body, filling her with heat. Her heart beat more frequently. He lifted her palms, their fingers beginning to intertwine. She didn't resist. "No, you can't do this, you can't do this." Becky thought, "I have a boyfriend. I've been with him for 6 years, and Mike was the first time she'd ever seen him yesterday. But how can I be happy with him? I've never felt as good in 6 years as I did today in one day." And Michael squeezed her soft, lovely fingers tighter and tighter. He wanted her, and he desired her. He longed to wrap his arms around her lovely body. Finally, Becky came to her senses and pulled her hand away from him, slightly embarrassed and blushing. The man's face became new. He turned away and nervously took out a cigarette, although he didn't really feel like smoking. "What on earth am I doing?" he thought. "She has a fiancé, especially he's in the same unit as me. Why am I telling her all this? Why did I bring her here? God, what an idiot am I?" And since we have a bus back to the station, Becky interrupted his musings. "There's one at 12 o'clock. He looked at his watch. And you wanted to go to your grandmother's grave. We'll make it." "Yeah, the cemetery's not far." "Good. Why don't we go then?" "Let's go." Michael lit a cigarette. They left the gazebo. As he left, he closed the gate and looked at his grandmother's house one last time. Tomorrow it would be sold to another person. His warm memories from his childhood would remain only in his soul. He mentally said a warm goodbye to the house, and they headed towards the cemetery. The village was deserted. Michael noticed that several houses were deserted. Such familiar places seemed so alien to him now. This was the end of a part of his life, of which he had many memories, good memories. He felt as if an invisible artist was erasing the forgotten frames of the movie of his life. He went on and on about his life, but all he could think about was the pleasant touch of her fingers. She was asking him something. They were looking at the countryside. An eggplant rushed past them. A new 9 with the windows down. Music played loudly from them. They walked along the forest on a dusty road and soon found themselves in a cemetery. They walked along the graves for a while and ended up at Grandma Michael's grave. "I'll wait for you there," Becky said and walked a little farther away. Okay. Grandpa and Grandma's grave were side by side. Their portraits stared at him silently from the granite stone. Grandpa Michael had died when he was 5 years old. He barely remembered him. His grandmother, on the other hand, had lived a very long time. Michael sat on a bench and thought about nothing. Nearby stood the old man's birch trees. When the warm summer wind blew, it became hot. Becky stood nearby near a monument. The sculpture depicted a weeping angel. The girl looked at it thoughtfully, and Michael approached her at the same time. "It's a beautiful sculpture." "Yes," agreed the man. Let's go, let's go." As they left the cemetery, they met a watchman who was sweeping up leaves and exchanged dry ones with him. "Hello." They walked a little way down the road towards the village when suddenly Becky's phone rang. It was Alex. "I'll answer it," she said. Michael agreed with her. "Hello?" Yeah, I was driving all right." "Where?" "Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood." "So you said it was only at 4 o'clock." "So I did." "All right, I'll be there soon." "What's wrong with your voice?" "Are you drunk again?" "No, look, she hung up on me." Michael looked at her and she sighed and said, "I think you're drunk again." "Oh my God, I am so sick of this. I can feel that he's drunk. I can feel it, and he's still lying to me. He just called me now, and it's 11 o'clock. I told him I'd be there at 8 o'clock. Nothing. You made it. You're fine. Do you need any help? Like I'm just there to drive food to his unit and put up with his drunken antics and wait for us to get an apartment that we may never get. God, I'm so tired of all this." Becky covered her face with her hands and cried. Michael was confused for a while. "I don't know what to do." Then something nudged him, and he hugged her. Becky clung to him in return and sobbed, her tears stinging his chest. He could feel the pain building up inside her. Michael held her beautiful body in his arms and could smell her beautiful hair. The girl was crying loudly. They stood in the middle of the woods near the road. The man had the feeling that they were some strangers among this lovely and endless nature. "Why should I beg for care? Don't I deserve it?" The girl read through her tears. "Don't I do enough for him? 6 years I'm with this turnover and nothing good. He only drinks and promises. And he'll quit drinking and marry me, and we'll have apartments and children. Yeah, of course, I should have kids by now. All the relatives want grandchildren, the clock is ticking. And this one." With these words, another sobbing fit burst from her chest. Michael held her tighter. His chest was wet with her tears. The girl cried for a while longer, and then her sobs turned to short sobs. Michael had some tissues in his backpack, and he held them out to her. She wiped her red, crying face. I don't know why Michael took one napkin and began to wipe her tears in a fatherly and caring way. Suddenly she took his hand when it was near her cheek. Their gazes met, her eyes glistened and her lips were moist. No longer able to control herself, they merged in a long and passionate kiss. It was a riot of vibrant colors inside a waterfall, emotions of fever coming from the very heart. Becky hugged his huge back and he stroked her waist. His hands moved lower and lower. She didn't mind and clutched to him even tighter. At one point, Becky pulled away from him, and he looked into her eyes and whispered, "Let's go into the woods." She nodded silently. He sat with his back leaning against a tree. She was rolling on top of him. Her lovely head of gorgeous, thick, darkly pantsed hair was on his chest. Becky was beautiful. Michael covered her with a windbreaker that he had in his backpack in case it rained. She felt warm and good with him. She seemed happy. He stroked her chin with his fingers. Once in a while, Becky kissed them lightly. It felt so good for the two of them. They were silent for a very long time, enjoying each other's company. And then the girl laughed lightly, stroked his chest, and said we didn't make the bus at 12 o'clock. We didn't make it. Michael agreed. What time is the next one? I think it's at 14 or 13:30. But what does it matter now? How do you feel about going on duty, Comrade Captain? Said Becky, and they laughed together. How does the song go? Airplanes first. Yes, and the girls after that. Michael finished for her. Well, you can't take a song for granted. I've been stuck with airplanes for 6 years. Kate got divorced, and that was it. You never had anyone else after her? No, just one-off stories that didn't last. There was this one girl. I fell in love with her, started courting her. You know the usual, but she didn't want any of that. She just laughed at me, that's all. Then I had no time for business trips, hotspots. I was making money, and my personal life was kind of wiped out. And then suddenly you. They were silent. Then Michael asked, tell me, why did you love your LX? I don't know exactly, Becky thought. Probably at 16, when he kissed me for the first time. It was some kind of hormonal thing. You know, a crush. Alex told me how he felt all the time. He gave me compliments, flowers, wooed me beautifully. He even wrote poems. Can you imagine? He told me how much he loved me and wanted to have children with me. And he was sure to marry me. But first, the military school, and then this coup for an apartment. I believed him. I waited for him always, because I had to. A woman should wait for a man because he's good, he's a provider. That's the way I was brought up. I studied, he studied. We saw each other once. We rented apartments to live together. I thought we have these feelings forever. And then it became more of a habit or something, you know? You didn't think about leaving him. Michael interrupted her. Becky was silent for a moment, and then she answered, I did, and sometimes I wanted to. Did you? I even tried to leave him. But he'd come back with a huge bouquet of roses, get down on his knees, and say, Becky, love, I'm sorry. I believed again. I thought that this time he would change and everything would be different. But no, it's the same old pattern. Everything goes well for a while. Then it's back to drinking, swearing, blaming me for everything. It's like a merry-go-round. I feel like such a fool now. You're not stupid, Becky. You're not stupid, Michael said, stroking her hair and kissing the top of her head. And then there's my relatives and my mom and my grandmother and my friends' grandmothers all pushing me. Come on, what are you talking about? He drinks. So what? Who doesn't drink nowadays? At least he's not cheating. You have to learn the military on the tape, and then, look, up to major, and maybe even colonel. What prospects and an apartment? Which of the suitors has an apartment now? Go with him, accept it. Nothing. It's just his youthful stupidity that will pass. Be patient. That's it. Mike, be patient. Be patient. Wait. And I'm waiting like a fool and bear with it. Mike, when will you live? To love, when to babysit and take the kids to the garden. Oh, I'm so sick of all this. They were silent, and he stroked her hair. Then the girl continued, and you and I have everything. That's how ashamed I am, Mike. I cheated on my fiancé with you. What will people think when they find out? They'll say I'm some kind of, you know. There'll be rumors all over town. Michael put his palm on her cheek, turned to face her and said, I don't care what anybody thinks, you know. I don't care. Let them think what they want to think. All people have opinions. Nobody forbids them to express their opinions. But you can just not listen to it. Turn it off and do what your heart desires. After these words, they merged again in a long and tender kiss. There was silence. Birds were singing. A cuckoo was heard in the distance. After the kiss, they were silent. And then Becky asked him, What story am I to you? What do you mean? But you said you had one-off stories there after your ex-wife. What if I'm a story to you too? Taking me to the country, charming me. What if this is all a cunning plan to seduce me? Becky, really? No, honestly, I swear to you. Mike, then what do we do now? I got a fiancé. You're in the service with him. In one unit, I'll live in this military town for a month and go to him, and then I'll go to you. I've never had anyone but Alex. I've never had a lover. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Oh, I don't know. Not a slutty woman, I guess. Becky, let's take things as they come. Right now, you and I are going to take the bus. Then you call Alex, get the car, drive separately from me so no one gets suspicious about us. I'll be there later. You can text me tonight and we'll meet. How interesting. I'll be in a show or a movie or inside a book I read as a kid. Secret dates, fiancés, lovers. I never thought I'd go on one of those. And here you were a random hitchhiker, Becky said, and gently slapped his chest with her palm. Let's walk slowly toward the bus. Oh, I don't feel like it, the girl said. I don't feel like it. I'd lie around with you all day long. So good, let's stay here for another 5 minutes. Come on, agreed the man. The bus pulled up, sighing all around him. The clubs where Becky and Mike sat down. Passengers with grim faces looked at them in surprise as if they were foreign elements. Michael held out money to the conductor and she gave him change. The bus bounced on the bumps. Becky stared out the window pensively and it was hot. He could feel the sweat beading on his forehead and his back getting wet. The seat beneath them had already warmed in the sun, now burning his buttocks slightly. "How far are we going to go?" Becky asked. "About 15 minutes," Michael answered. They were silent the rest of the way. They arrived at the train station where they had gotten off the train this morning. The rest of the way, they drove in silence. They arrived at the station where they got off the train this morning. It felt like they had lived a lifetime together in just one morning. The man lit a cigarette. The bus driver approached him and gestured for a lighter. He was a thin man in his 40s. He had a thick black brush mustache sticking out of wrinkles on his face. He was dressed in a brown shirt with stains under and under his arms and black pants. He dryly thanked and stepped aside, and Becky looked at Michael with loving eyes. He was so masculine, so tall, so strong. Her body could still feel it, his strong hands rough and caressing. He was beautiful. Mentally, Becky compared him to her Alex, and the latter was clearly losing on all counts. She didn't want to go to her fiance's house. She wanted this day to never end. Michael finished his cigarette, and they headed to the locker room to pick up their bags. He slung his green army bag over his shoulder and took Becky's heavy bags in his hands. "Can you carry them?" the girl asked. "Where would I go?" The man smiled. They headed towards the cab drivers. Seeing them, an elderly Indian with a characteristic accent shouted, "Guys, we need a cab." "Where are we going?" "Let's make the bags nice." He opened the trunk and made an inviting gesture. "How can you refuse such a service?" Michael thought to himself with a smile. The cab driver helped him to put the bags and then opened the door. Becky got in. "Only the girl will ride." "I'm not going," Michael said. "If you say so," agreed the cab driver. "Where to?" "To the military unit near here," answered Becky from the car. "Let's kick it, yeah," said Michael. "How much, bro?" "Special for you. The price is $5. I'm telling you, it's a very good deal. You go that way." "If you go that way, everybody's going to tell you $7, $8. I'll take the girl like a magic carpet and my mom. I swear." Michael smiled, pulled out his wallet, and gave the driver the bill he needed. After thinking a bit, he added the cabbie and another $1, said, "And this is for you for the service. Your brother from the heart. Well, let's go." "Wait a couple minutes," asked Michael. He leaned over to the car window. Becky looked at him. "But for now," she said. "For now, I'll text you tonight." "Okay, be careful." He stepped away from the car and signaled the driver to go. Then he walked a little farther and negotiated with another cab driver. After much haggling, Michael still agreed to ride for $7. The Armenian didn't cheat, Mike thought. It's nice that there are still honest people in our time. Meanwhile, Becky was driving and looking out the window. The Armenian turned out to be chatty. He kept saying something to her, and she rarely answered him, "Aha, aha." "What's wrong with you?" She looked at the familiar scenery, but everything seemed foreign to her. Without Michael Becky, she remembered his strong arms, his kind and honest eyes. She wished this day would end soon so she could call or write to him, so she could hear his voice again or feel him near. "Listen," the sergeant at the checkpoint told him. "Me, Captain Morris. Here's the paperwork." Michael held out his military ID card to him. "You should have your orders in there. Take a look." The sergeant looked at the computer and clicked a couple of times, then tapped the keyboard. He looked intently at the monitor and said, "Yes, there is." "Come on in, Captain." The sergeant handed Michael's military ID card back, and then a private shouted in a military manner. A young kid of 18 years old, skinny stubby with glasses, ran up to him. Probably joined the service recently. He set off clumsily and looked at the sergeant over his shoulder. "I need to talk." "Escort the comrade captain to the officer's barracks." "You know where it is?" "Executed exactly." "Yes, comrade." Staff Sergeant Michael went through the checkpoint. Soon he went into his room and started ironing his uniform to change and head to the colonel. Becky arrived before he did. She had been told that the chief warrant officer Loud was in the warehouse, and she needed to wait a bit. The sergeant called and reported to the petty officer that his fiancée had arrived. Alex showed up about 10 minutes later. He had a wrinkled look on his face, his soft uniform removed. She hadn't seen him in a couple months, but it appeared he'd changed beyond recognition in that time. His eyes had gotten small and swollen. He put on a couple extra pounds. His potbelly was showing under his uniform. He disgusted her. "Becky, my darling, my darling." His clumsy paws rested bulky on her shoulders. He reached for her with his lips, but Becky turned away and planted a kiss on her cheek. He smelled disgusting. "Are you drunk again?" she said to him instead of greeting him. "Becky, darling," in a diluted tongue began the petty officer. "What do you mean, drunk again?" "Well, we had a few drinks with William." That's how much he put his index finger and thumb together in a characteristic gesture. "I swear to you, it's the end of the week. My God, it's the end of the week. Come on, Becky." Then he said in a nasty, lustful tone of voice, "You will. You will. I haven't seen you in so long. Come on, you and me." Well, he reached out his hands to her again, trying to touch her charms. But Becky coldly and with irritation pushed him away and said today is Wednesday. Alex stared at her, uncomprehending. Slightly, staggered to her feet. "Wednesday. Wait, like Wednesday. And I thought, well, Wednesday is a little Friday. Here we go." Come on, your Alex missed you." That's what Becky said out loud. Alex jerked back in surprise. The two soldiers near the checkpoint turned their heads in her direction. Becky noticed this is what she continued, "Young man." There was a new metallic intonation in her voice, previously uncharacteristic of her. "We had a deal that you quit drinking, or at least around me you don't drink, because it disgusts me. It was on me. Look when I'm talking to you. It did or it didn't. It did. Gave in to Alex." So, Becky went on. She felt like someone else was speaking for her. "You broke the deal again. I don't like that at all. So I'm leaving now. You're staying here. Call me when you're sober. Also apologize to Becky, not Becky and me. I'm out of here. You can keep drinking with your Daniel. I don't care." Becky turned around and walked with wide steps away from the military unit, leaving the chief warrant officer and the soldiers near the checkpoint in mute indignation. One of them said to the other lad, "And she is cooler than our company commander. This one definitely give me a cigarette." The senior warrant officer stood for several minutes, looking at one point and did not understand what had just happened. He was already quite drunk and alcohol began to cover him more and more. Finding his feet, he turned around and headed back towards the checkpoint. Everything in front of his eyes went bad. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the soldiers staring at him with smokes and cigarettes. "What are you staring at?" angrily asked the petty officer. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all, Comrade Petty Officer," almost unanimously echoed the soldiers. "Look," I loudly headed through the checkpoint towards the warehouse, thinking to take to hell. What's gotten into her? She was always so docile. So what if she'd had a drink? She didn't know what got into her. All her life she's been a good and obedient girl. And now she's got her fiancé in a scandal outside the army station. Could it be Michael had that effect on her? She thought of him again, and a pleasant warmth spread through her body. The girl smiled, and the bags were no longer so heavy, the sun so hot, and the situation so unpleasant. Everything was suddenly good. Morris looked at himself in the mirror. The uniform had everything laid out all back on his shoulders, 4 stars and stripes. What's a captain's wen? How many? Asterisks? 5. Becky's voice echoed in his head. He remembered her smile, her eyes, the gentle voice, remembered how good it felt to stroke her body and kiss her lips. How he wished he could see her again. She'd probably really like me in uniform, Michael thought. Then he put on his cap and left the room. It was the first sign of dusk outside. A platoon ran past the barracks in formation. The captain passed the platoon and went to the colonel. Along the way he met soldiers who stopped, made military greetings, and said "Zdravlya, zdravlya." The captain silently answered them with a nod of the head. When he reached the headquarters, he reported to the secretary that he had arrived at the colonel's office. The secretary knocked on the office and invited him in. Out of the corner of his eye, Michael saw a sign on the door, Colonel Adams. Michael joked to himself about the most appropriate initials for the Russian army. Entering the office, he saw a large, bald, Shelkov man, slightly over 50, who was concentrating on his computer and poking at the keyboard with fingers that looked more like Bavarian sausages. Michael stopped near the door, holding his cap in his hand, and said, "Hello, Comrade Colonel." The latter took his eyes off the computer and looked at Arias in surprise, then smiled and shouted good-naturedly, "Zdorovi Vidali elephant's petals." Then they both laughed loudly, and the colonel continued, "Mike, my dear, are you?" "I am Comrade Colonel." The colonel started with open arms and walked towards the captain. They embraced, and the colonel kissed him twice, firmly and masculinely on both cheeks, and then began to shake his hand, smiling in 32 teeth on his brow. "And what a wind you got here, motherfucker. Come on, sit down and have a seat." Michael sat down and put his cap on the table. "Squeal, shout for our health. Thank you, Comrade Colonel, I won't refuse." "But Mike, let's not buy the charter." Colonel, got me here Itish with an important man," and loud and dispersed. Laughing. "I remember you in training school, you were like this." The colonel showed his little finger and cheeks. Then he retracted his cheeks. His face became like the face of a huge carp, which made Morris even more cheerful. "And now there you are waving like that. Captain, smile. Your shoulders are like that, and look, soon you'll be walking sideways to my office." "Oh, Mike." Colonel Adams reached for the bottle of whiskey in the first drawer of his desk. The captain laughed and smiled. He was very happy to see his good old teacher. The colonel pulled out a large bottle of expensive whiskey. Michael had never seen such a thing. He had. The colonel proudly tapped the bottle with his palm. "From Australia. Recently he and my daughter came to my birthday party. And he's a guy, a beat it guy." With these words, the colonel raised a finger in the air. "It's not that easy. We'd like to see more of them in the armed forces. Otherwise, it's this junk." The man pointed to his old computer with a large monitor. "But it's just nerves, not work." "All right," he said, and started pouring whiskey. "Come on, dear, to us, to you, and to the special forces." Cheers. The officers clinked glasses and put them on the table. Michael felt the whiskey burning his throat. Then a pleasant warmth went down his body with a lemon. Asked the colonel, "Comrade Colonel." "I don't snack after the first one." With these words, they laughed even louder because they remembered a funny incident from their youth. "So, Comrade Captain, you remind me of those times." Smiling, jokingly wagging his finger, told him Adams and is. "All right," thought the colonel, and began to shift a little to a more serious tone. "Think how you and I came to such a remote place. I thought you served somewhere near Moscow." "That's right. And then a business trip like a business trip." "Really?" asked the colonel, pouring the second one. "How are ours?" "Yes, things are going well. The task set by the leadership is being fulfilled." "Difficult. It all happened. I was stuck in that country for 3 years. I didn't even take a vacation. At least you got a bonus, right?" "Well, thank God." "What about here?" "An order is an order. My grandmother's village is nearby. I never thought I'd have to live here. As they say, God works in mysterious ways. That's for sure. And how are you here, Comrade Colonel?" "Oh, Mike, I beg your pardon, you've taken possession." Comrade Colonel, you I am for my Semyonovich." Got it. Confused," said Michael. "I have nothing special too. That's all. You and I are like ants. Wherever they tell us to go, that's where we go." "How about a third?" "No, Semyonovich, thanks, I don't want to." "What do you think?" "I'll have a drink with your permission." "Comrade Captain." And Adams laughed again. Then he poured himself another 50, drank it in one gulp. He wrinkled his nose a little and said, "Wow, what a drink. 15 years old. Come on, Mike, how do you live? Not married? Kids?" The captain was embarrassed. He remembered Becky's hair and her soft lips. He really wanted to hug her. Maybe he should call her after his talk with the colonel. "No, Semyonovich didn't get married," Michael sighed. "Why not? You're such a guy, handsome. Didn't you have a what's-her-name?" The colonel began to snap his fingers, trying to remember the name. Kate helped him, Morris. "That's right, Kate, white-haired. I was the one who came to see you, the pretty one." "I thought you were there with her." Why didn't it work out? Yes, Semyonix sighed. I married her. But as soon as I got married, I got divorced. 6 years I've been single. Betrayed. The colonel asked with understanding. That's right. The colonel shook his fist at the air. Well, time heals. There's no one in sight. No, said Michael, feeling like he was lying. Well, it's a matter of time. I got there okay. Oh, by the way, I met a girl on the road. The captain tried to keep his voice neutral, afraid to reveal his feelings for Becky. Can you imagine? She had to be in the same honor, said that she was on her way to the groom. Is that some kind of soldier? No. Senior warrant officer loud, said Michael, trying to hide his disgust at that name. Do you know him? Sure, I've known him for 6 months. And what can you say about him? What are you interested in? Colonel Michael asked, surprised, and realized that he was about to crack, so he tried to get out of the way. Yeah, I'm just curious. It's a weird coincidence. Wait, you said you're his fiancé. Yeah, he has a wife. Why a fiancé? Michael turned pale. He was ready to fall to the ground in shame. So he slept with a married woman and she cheated on him. An act unworthy of an officer's honor. So Becky lied to him. She was actually married to Alex. And if she was lying, why? Did she really want to cheat on him? Or maybe she wasn't going to see him at all? Questions like angry bees swirled in Morris's head. But the colonel interrupted his thoughts. But yes, he has a wife and 2 children. He told me so himself. It's in his personnel file, too. Mike, why are you looking so pale? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Out of breath, Michael said. What's his wife's name? Oh, God forbid I remember. I remember Becky. Oh yeah, Becky. The girl on the train was called Becky, too. So much for coining words, Michael said. Well, that's her then. Only why was the bride called that all of a sudden? Decided maybe to remember her youth on her wedding night? Colonel Captain laughed, suddenly felt a burning jealousy in her chest. Strange these women, damn them understand. So, all right. The colonel lightly slammed his palms on the table. Soon the tale will be told. But not soon the service will work out. I'll be sitting here to deal with this Bandera. Adams pointed to the computer, a mountain of orders to sort out. You go get some rest. Check in with the major tomorrow. At 10 o'clock he will tell you what's going on. Got it? That's right, Michael mumbled, barely moving his lips, but that's it. Good to see you. Good service to you, Comrade Captain. If you need anything, come on in. My doors are always open to you. Captain Morris walked out of headquarters, having a bad dream about sleeping with the chief warrant officer's wife. He thought, that's a hell of a thing to do. But damn it, with a very pretty ensign's wife. What's the difference? If anyone in the unit finds out, it'll be such a scandal. My God, what was I thinking? My head's all fucked up. I was imagining things. I believed her, and the woman just wanted to have fun. Of course, she's got a fallen husband, right? And here I am a captain, tall, handsome, strong. How could she not sleep with me? Oh, what a fool I was. Michael had dinner and spent the rest of the day in his room. He tried watching a movie on his laptop, but all his thoughts were only of her. Inside was a mixture of feelings of love and bitterness, jealousy, annoyance, shame, and anger at himself. After all, she was going to live in the town for a month. Becky would be traveling to it. Who can find out then what will happen? And how am I supposed to look that guy in the eye now? Maybe he's not an alcoholic at all, but a decent warrant officer. Everything else is just gossip and rumors. The colonel didn't say anything about him, right? Hello, Comrade Petty Officer. I slept with your wife in the woods. How's that? It's like a joke, for God's sake. Michael chased these thoughts in his head, lying on the bed with his hands behind his head. It was already 12 o'clock, but he didn't want to sleep. Tomorrow he would be up at 5. Suddenly, a cell phone registered on the nightstand. It was her. Gathering his strength, he picked up the phone and coldly said hello. Hi. Once again, that gentle voice ripped his heartstring apart. You're awake. No, in a cold, angry tone communicated Michael. How are you? Fine, and you? I've been thinking about you all day. What's wrong with you? You're so tense. You're doing fine." The man was silent for a long time and then asked, "Why did you lie to me? What are you talking about?" "Mike, I sincerely do not understand what you mean." "Let's be more specific." Becky was scared. "That Miloud is not your fiancé. He's your husband." What Becky marveled at. "I told you we're not married. He keeps asking me to marry him, but we never did. You have 2 kids with him. You hid it. Mike, have you been drinking? You don't sound like yourself, talking nonsense about your relationship." "Alex, I told you everything as it is, and I was honest and frank with you. You're a mother of 2 children, and you let yourself sleep with another man. You're such a righteous one." The girl lost her temper. "Let's say I was even a mother." "So what?" "Let's say I was even a mother." "So what? What are you, some kind of saint? You saw a girl younger than yourself, you tried to woo her, told her touching stories about her grandmother and her childhood. You wooed her, and then I burst into tears. And you, Menatep and Bang, and dragged her into the woods. Isn't that right?" The man was silent. "In a way she was right. That's right. And something tells me, even if I told you I was a mother of 2, it wouldn't stop you." Michael was silent again, and she was right again. "Why don't you say something? You've lost your tongue. Becky, you're not interested in anything else. No shame, no conscience. Look how interesting you've made me look. And now he's claiming I'm some kind of a dishonest person. You know what, Mike, I thought much better of you. Goodbye. I guess you and I had a one-time thing going on after all. I'm sorry. I was kind of hoping for more than that." Then tears came to the girl's eyes. There was a lump in her throat. God, I'm such an idiot. A month had passed since that conversation, or maybe a year, he didn't know. Everything appeared gray and dull to him. Michael knew that once a week Becky came to see the chief warrant officer. He tried not to cross paths with her, though his heart ached and his soul ached to tell her how he felt. However, he tried to bury them alive, but they inexorably burst from the bowels of his soul and grabbed his heart fiercely. In his chest pinched longing for the rack on the tape flashed days of service, the schedule of the day. Everything by the hour, everything by the minute. Routine sucked him in. But in his spare time he thought of her, remembered that fabulous day they spent together. There were times when he forgot about her, and it was strange to him that he thought about her for hours, but she suddenly became the centrifugal force of his thoughts. His whole being yearned for her. Several times he wanted to call her, talk to her normally, explain everything, maybe try again, or at least part on a good note. But he couldn't. His fingers were already dialing the cherished phone number, but something stopped him at the last moment. It was about the same thing. At first she was very angry with Mike and could not forgive him, then she began to long for him. She remembered the day she had spent with him too, and thought it was the most beautiful day she had had in the last 6 years. She wanted to go to him, but her feminine pride prevented her from dialing his phone number. No, she thought, if he was really a decent man and would fall in love with me as I did with him, let him dial me first and apologize. And if he's just another dog, let him go to the woods. There aren't many of them. Well, there aren't many, handsome, tall, handsome, nice, with money, with an apartment. A captain, probably a colonel. What rank comes after captain? I'll have to ask Alex. Alex called her 2 days after such an unpleasant incident at the checkpoint. Swore and swore that he would never drink again in his life, except a little bit on holidays. He told her he loved her and had been waiting for her all this time. And Becky believed him again, since she'd known him for 6 years. And Mike was the first time she'd ever seen him. Alex, he's kind of her own person. She consoled herself. Yeah, he drinks, sure. But what man doesn't drink? We should ask him about the apartment. What's the good news? Nothing. He'll take his exams in the fall. He'll go to study to be a lieutenant. And we'll live. But we're in this unit too. Will she have to avoid him? Alex came home from work. He hadn't had a drink in a month. Anyway, Becky didn't smell alcohol on him. She was making him dinner. They would chat about the day and then go to bed. Sometimes they had routine, monotonous, ordinary sex. Like all life after it, Alex would wheeze and Becky would pull the blanket up to her chin and stare at the ceiling. There were times when she would quietly cry herself. I don't know why. Or rather, she did. She didn't like this life. She didn't like it. She didn't like making him food every night. She didn't like everything. She often thought back to when they were in the woods with Michael and compared. He was so soft, so careful, and yet he was skillful at showing his strength. He enjoyed her body and tried to give pleasure to her. Alex, on the other hand, was thinking more about just satisfying his animal interests, and then fall asleep. Lately, she hadn't slept for a long time, because she was alone with herself at night, and she liked it. But okay, I'll dump Alex and go to him. We'll be in love for 3 years, and then it'll be the same routine. Everything changed abruptly one day, which was a fireworks display of strange and ridiculous events. Usually, Becky would sit in the apartment studying her books before her husband's service. Sometimes going for a walk to the local park. She was preparing for her final year at the institute. According to estimates, she was going for a red diploma and really didn't want to ruin her reputation. However, she realized that first a student works for credit, and then vice versa. But she decided to be reassured and to prepare for the new academic year in order to be ahead above her classmates. Besides, one of the professors hinted to her about graduate school, which interested her a lot. So she lay peacefully on the couch and read a thick textbook. Periodically, she would underline something with a pencil and text with her girlfriend, and the windows were wide open because it was a hot summer day and she wanted to cool it down a bit. Suddenly, her cell phone rang. An unfamiliar number popped up on the display. Again, probably they will sell me loans. Annoyed, she thought, and picked up the phone. "Hello, Becky," asked a male voice. "Who is this?" "Sergeant of the Wells is concerned from the military unit. We have some kind of an emergency related to Senior Warrant Officer Loud, your husband, that is. Could you come over for some clarification?" Yeah, Becky's worried. "How did you get my number?" "Captain Morris, and he's in the neighborhood. Can I give him a message?" "No, not necessary," coldly, Becky said, at the same time feeling a pleasant exultation inside. Her lower abdomen healed sweetly. "I'm on my way. Stand by." In the meantime, there were some very interesting events going on in the unit that required her participation. And it all started with the firing range. Captain Morris was watching through binoculars as the men hit their targets. It was the heat of summer. He could feel a rivulet of sweat dripping from under his cap. The air was filled with shots from Kalashnikov rifles. Morris looked at one platoon. For some reason, there were not enough soldiers in the positions there should be 12 men, but there were only 7. Michael approached the animal and through the noise of gunfire said, "Comrade Lieutenant, I am Comrade Captain. Why do you not have enough men in position? I can't know mages." Suddenly a sergeant ran up to them, and panting Vasia voice said, "Comrade Captain, Comrade Lieutenant, permission to report." "Permission granted," replied Morris. "The privates as well as the corporal are still in the ammunition depot." The non-commissioned officer was left in charge. Chief Warrant Officer Loud refused to give us assault rifles. He said that there were no more assault rifles, we were not entitled to any. I told him that everything should be enough, because yesterday you, Comrade Lieutenant, checked everything together with him. And there's an order from Comrade Major to hold a training session at the firing range. So, boldly asked Morris. Comrade Chief Warrant Officer refused to give us the required automatic rifles, closed the ammunition depot, and went in an unknown direction. The lieutenant swore hard. Morris, with a bitter intonation, said, "He who serves in the army does not laugh in the circus. So what do you want to do?" asked the sergeant, the lieutenant, and the captain. They looked at each other. Michael said, "Lieutenant." "Continue with the drill." "Sarge, what's your last name?" "Sergeant Wells." "Comrade Captain." "Got it." "Do you know where the petty officer is? Could it be him?" "He's often at the ensign's place." "Is it in the hangars where we keep the cars?" "Come on, how do we visit him?" "Take me there, Comrade Captain." "Let's go." The captain followed the sergeant. To his left, soldiers were lying down and shooting at targets. After about 10 minutes, they were outside the lightly lived-in hangar. It was semi-dark inside. The captain and sergeant headed toward the entrance. As the captain approached, he heard laughter and smelled a strong odor of alcohol and tobacco. Even though there was a no smoking sign on Anger's door, "Sarge, there's a place to stay." The captain went inside the Angara and started walking along the rows of barrels and crates. He heard the end of the conversation, and I say to him, "What 300 liters of diesel paste do you want?" Death by Dacha. This was followed by a silly and loud laughter. Going around the corner, the captain saw the following picture. At a simple table with iron legs, preserved from the Soviet times on 2 stools, sat Chief Warrant Officer Loud and Warrant Officer Daniel. On the table was shot newspaper, on which stood 2 bottles of moonshine jar, pickles, sprats, a loaf of black bread, cucumbers, tomatoes, and green onions. The warrant officers' shirts had been reached. They held smoking cigarettes in their hands. The men were heavily intoxicated, though the clock showed only 12. Seeing the captain, Warrant Officer Daniel clumsily put the cigarette in the ashtray, then tried to stand up, but apparently from severe alcohol intoxication fell to the concrete floor, laughing, spreading his legs like a clown in a circus. The ensign loudly turned his head away, and as if not noticing the captain, continued smoking. The captain looked at Petty Officer Loud. Stocky, clean-shaven, with a swollen face and a red nose. His eyes and lips were more like and awkwardly cooked dumplings. Of what she found in him, it was like this. Captain Morris's first impression had never previously crossed paths with him on duty, but now it felt as if he was seeing him in his true guise. Finally, the captain couldn't stand it any longer and yelled Daniel and Loud. "How do you make sense of this?" By this time, Daniel clumsily stood up and, staggering on his feet through his thick gray mustache, said, "Hello, I wish you healthier. We've seen the petals on an elephant." Morris bellowed, "Why are you sitting and drinking moonshine in the middle of the service?" "I answer according to the regulations. Comrade Captain Daniel blamed me." "The military enlistment office is to blame," answered Morris. Sit down calmly," Loud said to him loudly. The ensign looked at the captain in confusion, then at his drinking companion, and clumsily sat down. "Comrade Petty Officer, respect the chain of command. I am the senior officer here. Why didn't you stand up and salute according to the regulations?" "Maybe I'm not supposed to." "What did you say?" said Morris. "Well, say it again." "You heard perfectly well," calmly said loudly Loud and put out his cigarette. Then rolled on the wall and folded his hands on his stomach. "What did you come here for? You're supposed to be at the shooting range, aren't you?" "Comrade Chief Warrant Officer, you seem to forget." Hardly containing his rage, said the captain. "Yes, it's you who forget everything. I've been in this unit for almost 5 years, and you arrived a month ago. Everything goes through me here, you understand? And you're so sidetracked." Morris's face, beating Loud's thunder, continued to grow insolent. "Come on, what are you gonna do to me? You hit me, you'll be out of here like a champagne cork. Nobody's gonna believe you anyway." "I got it. I'll believe you." Suddenly there was a voice. Everyone turned around and saw Sergeant Kolosov. He looked bravely at Loud. "And I'll believe it," he repeated the sergeant. "I told you to wait outside. Why don't you follow orders?" asked Morris. But in his heart he was glad that Loudon had decided to support him. "Yes, because it is no longer possible. Comrade Captain started that one. Then there are no machine guns. Then there is a shortage of boots. Then the uniform is the wrong size. I have soldiers complaining all the time. We've been stuck for an hour today. I was proving to him that there are machine guns. I've been on contract in this unit for 2 years. And frankly, I'm getting a little tired of it." "You asshole." Loud grabbed an empty bottle of moonshine and wanted to smash its head at the well, remembering the lessons of hand-to-hand combat. Morris hit the elder with the edge of his palm near his wrist, and he instantly dropped the bottle. Then Michael grabbed him by the wrist and took a small step and twisted his arm painfully. "Let go of my hand, you bastard," shouted Graham and, kneeling down. "Handle by the book," Morris bellowed at him. The sergeant-at-arms was startled by what he saw and flinched. The captain did it in a second. For a while, they didn't even realize what had happened. But Loud, in spite of the pain, remained stubbornly silent. Morris pressed harder on his hand and said, did not change his mind to address the statute in a machine voice, loudly repeated the captain. Petty officer wheezed, his face became new eyes glistened with tears of pain. For a while he was still screaming, then began to gather the necessary thoughts and said, Comrade Captain, my fault, let go of my hand, please, it hurts. Morris let go of his hands, Loud fell to the floor and grabbed his wrist. He resembled a wounded bear. Morris adjusted his cap, then looked over his left shoulder at Daniel and said, Comrade Warrant Officer, I am Comrade Captain. So we're gonna clean up the warehouse, clean up the liquor, throw out the liquor. Do you understand? Yes, Comrade Captain. Permission to proceed. Permission granted. Then he wanted to give an order to the man who was still writhing on the floor in pain, but he was interrupted by a voice from outside. Comrade Petty Officer, Comrade Petty Officer. Then everyone listened to the sound of footsteps and a soldier Comrade Petty Officer walked in. Oh, he saw Loud on the floor and was surprised. Quickly he looked around at the participants of the scene. Suddenly he saw the captain standing at attention and said, Zdorovia, Comrade Captain, we've seen your health. As a private reports, I was looking for Comrade Petty Officer. There is some citizen at the checkpoint with 2 small children, she says. His wife. Becky thought Michael and his heart beat faster. He became agitated, but tried to look calm on the outside and answered the private. You said there are no visits now. Yes, Comrade Captain told her. And me and the surgeon. But she stands her ground, he says. She hasn't been in touch for 2 years. She already thought he was dead or missing. She came and asked loudly if he served in this unit. And we didn't say anything. So she showed us photos of the joint, he says. My husband. I've been looking for him for 2 years, at least for 10 minutes. Bring him to me to make sure he's alive and well. And then I'll come when I can. Comrade Sergeant, I gave the okay, so I'm here. Playdate Michael, a popular personality, said the captain, leaning over him. Let's go to the checkpoint to sort things out. Or do you need to be taken by the handle? No way. Comrade Captain Pard, the petty officer, answered him. I'll walk myself. Well, that's good, replied the captain of the Wells. I'm going back. Take the men, go to the firing range. Will you swap assault rifles with someone? Tell the lieutenant I ordered it and there is. Come on, petty officer, let's see what you've got there. What are the secrets of the Madrid court? In the Russian army, Morris came out of the checkpoint and saw a woman standing nearby. She had a white shawl on her head. She looked about 30 years old. She wore a simple black dress. She had a full build. Sneaky, disgusting. A second chin spread out. She resembled a chicken on a net that had been suddenly kicked off the farm, and that one now wandered clumsily through the woods. By the hand. The woman was holding a little girl who was picking her nose thoughtfully, and next to her a boy was running merrily, kicking pebbles. Hey, don't run. Who did I tell? Morris headed toward the woman. At that time a door opened behind him, and out came Loud. His gaze met the woman's eyes, and she leaned over to the girl and said, Nancy, sunshine, stay here, okay? Now Mommy and Daddy will talk. That's a clever girl. Don't run on the road. The woman swaggered and gait went to the petty officer, as if not noticing the captain on the way. Then she started a scandal. What about you, Betty? Well, look at you, you showed up. We haven't forgotten. Bread and salt to you, Comrade Chief Warrant Officer. The woman made a comical and grotesque bow. Where have you been? Cattle? Why didn't you send money to the kids? Who promised to pay the rent? I thought you'd been killed in a hot spot somewhere. And here he is, sitting in the middle of nowhere and not a care in the world. Excuse me, citizen. Morris turned to her. Who are you? Someone tiredly, she exclaimed. Wife, I'm the Wonder in Feathers. May I see your papers? For God's sake. Here's your passport, it's stamped. Here's his marriage certificate, his children's birth certificates. Twins Christina and Nancy. Here are the photos. Christina, why are you putting that dirty stick in your mouth? I'll be right back. Morris looked at Loud, who from shame became like a ghost from drinking it staggered. Then the captain began to look at the documents. Right. Marriage certificate. He said to himself, Becky and loud Alex. So the children were like a bucket of cold water poured on the captain, as if in the distance. He could hear Becky scolding loud, and the latter clumsily making excuses. And then the conversation with Izveski on the phone from a month ago popped into his head. The puzzle came together. He realized, well, the hell with loud. Becky, yes. Morris walked over and handed her the file folder. You know, there's someone you might be interested in meeting. Who's that? The woman was surprised. And you will see, said the captain and went to the checkpoint. No sooner had he handed the phone number to the sergeant than the bell rang. C-H-C-K-P-O-A-N-T, sergeant here. Yes, yes, comrade colonel. Comrade captain, is this you? Mike, yes, and fly to me now, said Adams on the other end of the wire. Yes, comrade colonel. Adams looked thoughtfully out the window and smoked a cigarette. There was a knock at the door. It's open, he said. Called, comrade colonel called, said the colonel. He went to the table and shook out the ashtray. Then he unceremoniously began gradually raising his voice. Mike, what kind of a circus with horses have you arranged here today? Eh? What are you talking about? Comrade colonel, making an innocent look, clarified Morris. So you don't make a fool of me, Mike. Manual abuse in the relations of junior ranks is a criminal case. Adams began to point his finger threateningly at Morris. Michael turned pale, then asked, How did you find out? Mike, you've been in the army for years. In one corner. Everyone here knows everything. Daniel must have snitched, thought Morris. You're just standing there with your mouth watering. I got a test coming up, you know. And you're pulling these tricks on me. A test. If they find out about your tricks, loud the general and our whole unit. The generals will tear our whole unit apart. We'll be glad we're still lieutenants instead of privates. Comrade colonel, let me tell you how it was. Go ahead. Just sit down, or there's no truth in your legs. Michael told the whole story with the petty officer about the shortage of machine guns, about the drunkenness in the hangar, about the complaints from Sergeant Kolosov, about the fact that about that woman with children, who showed up at the unit, turned out to be his wife. The program Loud hid from her for 2 years. About the fiancé he had cheated and deceived all that time. The colonel, continuously smoking one after another, filling the ashtray with barrels. When the captain had finished, he nodded his head, sighed heavily, was silent, and then said, It is clear that the case is dark, but this text is loud. What to do with it? You are the captain now. You should drive him away, comrade colonel. I suspect he sold those machine guns in the first place. And this is a criminal case. The colonel stretched out. Oh, God has sent me trouble with this Loud. I should deal with him. Where did the 5 machine guns from the unit go? I can't know, comrade colonel. But a petty officer might. Yeah. After a little thought, the colonel pressed a button on the desk. Sergeyev. I'm comrade colonel. Petty officer, I have a fly. After a while, there was a knock at the door. Before that, the captain and the colonel had been waiting for him in silence. Openly, said the colonel. Called comrade colonel, said loudly, Loud, stand at attention. He had already managed to sober up. His face was pale and tired. The petty officer cast an angry glance at the captain. He was staring out of the window, as if he did not notice anything. I'll tell you what you've been doing, Colonel. There have been complaints about you for a long time, and today you have arranged for me a blue light too cunning, pounding that machine guns from the part of the aunt, then bickering some woman arranges a scandals, intrigues, investigations at the checkpoint. This is a military unit here, not a brothel. But the petty officer started to justify himself. Ninok, the colonel said to me and banged his fist on the table. You'll be your wife, I finally realized, which is in my unit now, and she's making a mess of it. So the colonel christened the fingers of his hands. Today you write an application for transfer to another unit at your own will. And in 2 days, don't let your spirit be here or I'll show your mom's mom to you. That's clear. Yes, comrade colonel. Well, that's good. Okay, Morris, get out. I'm gonna talk to him about why the hell David Copperfield is in our unit. The machine guns are disappearing. What the hell kind of trick is that? Sat down fast. Morris went to the exit of the office and said, Honor, let's see you tomorrow. The captain walked out, closing the door behind him, and then left the evening headquarters building. He walked slowly towards the mess hall. He wanted to get some refreshment, just in time for dinner soon. Well, that one had progressed. When Becky arrived at the military unit, at first there was a feeling that it was all some kind of a bad dream, as if the events were not happening to her, and you could pinch yourself on the arm and wake up. Becky saw some fat woman who was waving her arms at the children who were running around playing soldiers, and Alex, who just looked pathetic. At that moment, she realized that she was seeing him for the last time in her life. To her, he looked like a nasty grave in the forest. Loud was awkwardly waving his arms and trying to prove something to the woman. Becky approached them. Alex, what's going on here? She asked the woman in a glassy voice. Who is this woman? Nasty teased her father and then turned to Alex. You asshole. You found someone younger. Well, I was changing the kids' diapers. Oh, look at her. She looked at Becky with appraising eyes. Just like Varvara, the beautiful long braid. Bob. Woman, what do you think you're doing? Coldly, Becky replied. What do you think you're doing? How dare you take your husband away from your family? I stole your husband. Becky asked in surprise, letting out a nervous laugh and pointing her hand at herself. Tears appeared in her eyes. I think she was beginning to realize the extent of the deception. Yeah, well, you can read. Here, look, the woman said, holding the marriage certificate almost under her nose. Becky took the documents, her lips moving soundlessly. Becky and loud. No, it couldn't be, Becky thought, and then handed the papers back. She looked at Alex. It felt like powerful laser beams were about to shoot out of her eyes and saw him. Alex, how could you? Becky began in a trembling voice. How could I, dearie? And I'll tell you how I could. Very simple, Becky answered her. Came to our town on a business trip at the soldier's exit button variant. Well, that's the whole story. Why don't you say something? He's walking all over the place. Hands at his sides, met me, frowned at me. I frowned at him. Doesn't it bother you that I'm almost 10 years older than you? And women are like fine wine. It gets better and better as the years go by. Before his Anna Becky felt everything in her chest split into small pieces. Well then, Becky continued. The second time he came, he got me pregnant. I gave him twins. There's kids running around. Christina and Nancy were giving him an apartment. So he asked for an apartment in our town. So we started living there with the kids. He came to visit us sometimes. Becky felt as if she was falling into the working sand, and the woman went on, and then he disappeared for 2 years. Never heard a word from him. And I thought, God, it's not like the military. Maybe they sent him to a hot spot. Maybe he died or something. But no. Aunt Veja is sitting here quietly, peacefully, so that she can't knit and can't stand on her feet. And his wife and children are struggling and paying rent, buying groceries, shoes, and clothes for the kids. What are you looking at? You're looking at me, you miserable dog. She looked at Alex. Who's going to give the kids money? And I work from morning till night. My mom takes care of Nancy and Christina. She's old and her legs are bad. This boar is healthy, but in the woods he hid under a bush. It's not our business to give birth. Then that's the way it is with you bastard, TDC answer. My whole soul has not been spoiled by this life. For a while, all three were silent. Becky crossed her arms and looked away. The woman stared at the petty officer, and he froze like a stumbling block, lowering his eyes to the floor as if he were a guilty child. And what did he do to you, dearie? The woman turned to Becky. What about you, though? Becky waved her hand. You're as clear as the day of God. He met you? He fell in love. He forgot about his wife and children and disappeared for 2 years. And here he was courting you. That's how it was. No, coldly, Becky answered. Do you misunderstand? It hurts me as much as it hurts you. How am I supposed to understand? Asked Becky, starting to boil. What are you going to tell me, chicken? I need to understand. How can you not? What are you, Betty, a chicken? You got it all wrong. She teased Becky. Tell me how I'm supposed to understand, because you're so smart. You know what? Becky said calmly, barely holding back tears. Her lips were trembling. She glanced briefly at Alex and then at his wife. And I'm not going to explain anything to you, Becky exclaimed loudly. Her voice quivered. Then 2 rivulets of tears synchronously flowed from her eyes down her cheeks. I don't have to do this, Becky said through her sobs. You're nobody to me. And you and Alex are nothing to me now either. I loved you, I trusted you all these years, and you. She paused a little to hold back the tsunami and the tears, then tried to say as coldly as possible, I'm going to get all my things today. I'll go home tomorrow, get a ticket for the next train. You'll never see me again. Deal with your wife. Don't come home. Otherwise, I'll call the police. Goodbye. With these words, the girl turned around and headed away from the military unit towards the bus stop. Sobs slammed into her face and tore at her chest. On the bus, the passengers looked at her sympathetically. One woman sitting next to her even patted her on the shoulder and said, Nothing, honey, nothing, everything will work out. You're young, you'll meet someone else. Yes, I already have, Becky thought, and remembered Michael, how she wished she could be in his arms right now. He was so safe and so good. She had even forgotten that he had accused her of lying. When she got home, Becky fell on the bed like a bauble, sobbing harshly and loudly. She didn't remember how long she roared. Her entire pillow was wet with tears. She must have sobbed so loudly that the neighbors heard. She had never been so ashamed. Becky felt small, worthless, unwanted, and deceived. For so many years he'd lied to her, hid an entire family and children from her. She had waited so long for this apartment, and he had been given it a long time ago. He gave it away so easily to some woman who got him pregnant. Yeah, a woman with kids needs an apartment more than a woman with kids. It doesn't matter that he's been with her since high school. It was starting to get dark. Becky pulled her tear-stained face away from the pillow and looked out the window. The sun was leaning toward dusk. The girl headed to the bathroom and took a hot shower. She felt better in her head and felt cleaner and clearer. She got out a white towel and washed her face with water, then put cream on her legs. We have to get train tickets and get out of here right away, she thought. There might not even be tickets anymore. The girl came out of the bathroom with a towel and wet hair. Becky resembled an ancient Greek goddess, who for some unknown reason suddenly found herself in this apartment. She opened her laptop and started looking at train tickets. There were 2 seats left on the 2114. Becky quickly paid for the ticket. So great. Now she needed to dry her hair and could pack. Suddenly the phone rang. Naturally, Becky wasn't expecting anyone. The bastard must have come in a heartbeat, Becky thought. He'll be on his knees apologizing to me again. Well, I'll give him a good one. With that thought, Becky went to the front door and coldly asked who was there. Then she looked through the peephole, and aghast in the sphere of space and eyes stood Michael. He was in military uniform with a large bouquet of roses and a gift bag. Becky, it was me, he said. The girl leaned sweetly with her back against the door. Her heart beat faster. A woman's pride for some reason blurted out, go away. Though her heart whispered, stay with me all night. Becky, listen to me, Michael said. I was wrong. Forgive me, the colonel said. I thought you were what are you? Oh, why is everything so hard to say? Michael signed in. Becky looked at him through the peephole and smiled. Becky, can you hear me? Becky sighed, man. I can't live normally while you're not with me. I don't sleep well. I think about you all the time. The woman's heart raced. I'm sorry I accused you, I'm sorry. There was silence for a while. Then Becky said, go on. I'm here with flowers. Champagne and candy, even a pineapple, Michael said, embarrassed. You don't mind if, in fact, I want to sit with you tonight. Let's drink champagne and talk quietly. I've missed you. You don't know how much. She felt everything inside her melt. She missed you too. For a moment, the incident with Loud really did seem like a bad dream that had happened somewhere out there a long time ago. But reality is here. and in it there is Mike so handsome in military uniform, and with flowers the girl was about to open the door for him, but then suddenly remembered that she is still only busy on the towel. And her hair is wet. It's not good to meet him like that. He's so handsome. Becky opened the door for him with a quick whiff of the bathtub. The man saw only her pretty leg. The girl closed herself in the bathroom and shouted from their mic, "Come in, don't be shy. Just close the door 2 turns. Come into the living room. I wasn't expecting you. I'm from the bathroom. I just need to dry my hair and tidy up a little." Michael walked slowly into the hallway. He found a vase, poured water, and put the bouquet in. Then put the candy and put the champagne away in the refrigerator, pulled out at us. He looked kind of clumsy against the backdrop of this apartment, set down 2 flutes, and waited for the one he'd probably been waiting for his whole life. Becky had her hair done and then ran to her room and began frantically rummaging through her closet, looking for the best lingerie. Then found a red dress that she hadn't wanted to take at all when she first went, because she thought she wouldn't need it at all. Well, she did. It's working out, Becky thought and smiled. What's life like? Sometimes an amazing thing, and sometimes looking like a madhouse sneeze. And to herself, the girl. One fiancé disappeared and the second one immediately showed up. Becky looked at herself in the mirror. She was enchanted by the dress. Incredibly, it suited her and brightly emphasized her beautiful forms. The girl played with her hair and said to herself, "Goddess," and went into the room. When Michael saw her, he opened his mouth in amazement. He got up from the couch, looked at her. Becky looked at him from under her lowered eyelashes in embarrassment. "How do I look?" she asked. "No words." "You look great," Michael answered in a half-whisper. "But I'm glad," flirtatiously replied Becky. She walked over to the sofa, swayed her hips, and sat next to him, putting her lovely arm on the back of the sofa and put her leg over his leg. The girl looked languidly into Michael's eyes. Her eyes glistened, and the captain's heart was ready to leap out of his chest. "Dear Captain," she said, running her finger across his chest. "A drink and champagne, of course," fussed Michael. He went to the kitchen, got a bottle, came back into the living room with a puff of smoke and a light pop. He opened the champagne and poured it into a flute. Leaving a little foam on top, they took the glasses. And Becky asked, "What are we drinking to?" "Becky, my dear," Michael began to say, "I know you don't have much time, and neither do you. But I think about you all the time. You're very beautiful, you're kind, you're understanding. And you listen to me very attentively, without interrupting. I've never met a woman who lets me say everything that's on my mind. It's a pleasure." But I bent my pretty head and smiled. Those words sort of flowed down my body nerves. And Michael continued, "You said it was probably a one-time thing for me. Well, it wasn't. I fell in love with you the moment I saw you. I'm ready to be with you for a very long time. Maybe into my old age if you want me to. I swear to you on my honor as an officer, you're dear to me." That's all I wanted to say. Without waiting for the end of the sentence, she kissed him tenderly on the lips. Michael put his arms around her. The kiss lasted for several minutes. Then Becky stopped, looked at Michael, and carried a glass to the lovely boy. "What a wonderful toast," she whispered and took a sip. They sat down on the couch and began to chat. Becky and Mike laughed a lot and hugged each other. And I imagine, Michael told the colonel, I was told, but it all came together in my head. And then it turned out the couple was laughing. Turns out that one was laughing too. And I was a fool, I didn't even think to look at his personnel file. 10 years of service. So I'm like this, I get to the unit. And the sergeant from the checkpoint called me. And there stands this, said Becky, depicting without uniform contours of a woman. This creature is there looking at him, yelling something at him. Becky interrupted, because she got very funny, and she and Michael laughed. Becky continued before spilling it. Man, I cried in there. And now I'm laughing, and I can't stop. Her cheeks were flushed. Champagne hit my head, and Polkin calls me and Mike, "What are you doing?" And that loud. Michael did a very funny impersonation of Adams, and Becky laughed even more. It's such a madhouse. Becky said, stretching her words, "I never thought life could be like this. Crying in the morning, laughing in the evening. Oh, that's it. A major thing figured out in one day. It would be nice if it was just a gradual cover-up. But like in detective stories, you see the clues, there's all sorts of suspicions. And there's no bread. In one day, it's all on a plate. What did you say about him? The machine guns are missing. Yeah, and the machine guns and the drinking, and the wife and kids from out of town for whom he got an apartment. It's more like a reality show, to be honest. I agree, Michael nodded. He's signing an application for a transfer to another unit, like at his own request. Adams ordered it. I don't know what they decided with the machine guns. Yeah, it's important. Becky brushed it off, taking a sip of champagne. Let him go to the woods. God, I'm so glad this is finally over. Not the way a relationship should end, not with all the ugliness and circus, but it's over. Michael summed it up. Yes, it's over, Becky repeated. And then she said with big eyes, and new ones have begun. Shall we have a drink? Said Michael. After a while, he asked Becky, I was wondering what you thought of me. When I called you and told you that you cheated on me. Becky gathered her thoughts and said, at first I was very angry with you, and then I tried to forget you, but it didn't work. Then I persuaded myself that I had to build a life with Alex. It's okay that he will stop drinking and everything will change. But she said from the hobbling, I thought about you every day. I also gently said, Michael, taking her hand. I really wanted you to call me constantly on the phone looking, but I wouldn't pick up the phone first, of course. I should be properly offended, but then I'd probably listen to you. And I've been meaning to call you, Michael exclaimed. Why didn't you? Becky asked jokingly, shoving him in the shoulder. I thought you wouldn't want to hear from me. And when you came here with flowers, what did you think? Victory or death? What do you mean? Well, it was simple. Either you let me in or you don't. Or you'd already gone back. I thought of all the possible scenarios. There was the scenario where you call for flowers and slap me in the face with them. Seriously. Even that happened when Becky was giggling. Even that happened. Michael repeated. The radio played nice, slow music in the background. Captain, ask your lady to dance, Becky jokingly commanded. There was comical, Michael replied. He put his arm around her waist. She put her hands on his shoulders, gazing into his eyes. They moved slowly, ever so slightly swaying. Suddenly, Michael asked, Becky, will you marry me? Of course, she smiled and pressed her whole body against him.